Ben, can you hear us?
Ben, can you hear us? Can you hear the, I don't think he can hear us.
I am not hearing anything.
Councillor Brooks, are you getting any audio?
Yes, I am just now. Thank you.
Perfect.
Good morning, council members, staff, and members of the public. It is Tuesday, July 22nd, and I would like to call this council meeting to order and begin by acknowledging that we are in Mi'kma'ki, the traditional territory of the Mi'kmaq people. We have regrets today from Councillor DeLong. Moving along in our agenda, under announcements, acknowledgements, and recognition, we do have a proclamation, and I will turn it over to Mayor McLean-Weil to bring that forward.
Whereas August 1st is Emancipation Day, commemorating the anniversary date of 1834, when the British Parliament abolished slavery across its empire, freeing about 800,000 enslaved people of African descent throughout the British colonies. And whereas we must acknowledge that slavery was part of our province and country's horrific past, and this history must be shared in our efforts to work together to address anti-Black racism and all forms of racism, so all Nova Scotians can prosper, reach their full potential, and live as equal citizens. Therefore, on behalf of the municipality of the District of Lunenburg, I do hereby proclaim August 1st to be Emancipation Day.
Thank you for bringing that forward. Do we have any other announcements, acknowledgements, or recognitions? Councillor Smith.
Thank you. This is Nova Scotia Farmers Market Week, so I wanted to make a special acknowledgement of the farmers market that serves many of my communities, which is the New Germany Farmers Market. Having been in the community for over 20 years, I've seen farmers markets come and go, and it's been a struggle to I think, keep them alive in our community. And it's been really wonderful to see it growing stronger over the past couple of years. One of the highlights for me this year has been the Handcrafted Festival that is held at the market. Each Market Friday, there's been a demo from a local artisan. Last week, people got the chance to try screen printing with a local artist from my district, Erin Knowles. Next week, there will be a demo by the Keji Weavers Guild with longtime weavers Donna Fink and Madeline Bowers. Other regular features of the market include hot food, Korean food served inside the Anglican Church Hall by Suni and William Kim, two other residents from my area. And another favorite feature for me at this market is that you can end your week with a tarot reading, and that's by donation. There are vendors selling art, baked goods, vegetables, books, preserves, and the vibe includes lots of hugs, community pride, exchange of news, debates of ideas, and just a general excitement about what's next for the area. So I just want to say hats off to the 644, the group that currently manages the market, and the group includes committed volunteers from across several districts, Councillor Hubley's, Councillor Moore's, and mine. And yeah, I just want to congratulate them on doing a great job breathing new life into a local farmers market, and invite everyone to come out on Friday afternoons from 2 to 6 p.m. Oh, at the Anglican Church Hall in New Germany.
Sounds like a fun time. It's a busy week. There's nobody in our gallery for public input, but I'll just take the opportunity to remind those that might be listening or tuning in after the recording that public input is one of several opportunities for the public to engage with council. Residents are welcome to use the public input portion of the meeting to share their thoughts with the council on municipal topics that are important to them. We also encouraging visits to our engage.modl.com website as well to for other opportunities to learn about what's happening. Are there any changes or approvals? Oh, okay. Are there any changes or approvals for the agenda? Seeing none, can I get a motion to approve the agenda? Moved by Councillor Oikel, seconded by Councillor Bell.
Councillor Brooks just put his hand up. Maybe he's getting a delay.
Yeah, Councillor Brooks, we have Councillor Brooks online. Did you have your hand up, Councillor Brooks? There
Yeah,
might have been
I
a
just
slight
was
delay. Second, okay. Just wanted to make sure that you didn't have a
you.
change or an addition. Okay, so it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor? Agenda is approved. There is one set of minutes in our agenda package for July 8th, 2025. Are there any errors, omissions to those minutes? Seeing none, we'll call those minutes approved. Is there any business arising from the minutes? Our Deputy CAO? Oh, Jerry, is there any business arising from the minutes? Thank you. So we'll move down to awarding of tenders and RFPs. Item 7.1, award of RFP 2025-01-400, Mark Ballfield backstops, fencing, and dugout adjustments. And we have Maria Butts, our project manager, to come forward and present on that.
Thank you and good morning. So this RFP was posted on June 26th and closed on July 10th. 2 proposals were received and accepted by the deadline and evaluated. The proposals were evaluated by a staff committee, and of the 2 submitted proposals, Eastern Fence Erectors Limited received the highest overall ranking and was identified as the proponent that would provide the best value to the municipality for the services identified in this RFP. The scope of work will see the replacement of aged infrastructure, including fencing and backstops at our 3 ball fields at the Mark and Dayspring, and upgrades to fencing, as well as our dugouts, which will enhance users' experience and improve the facilities at the Mark. So I am here this morning seeking council's approval to award the RFP 2025-01-400 to Eastern Fence Erectors Limited.
Are there any questions from council members before we put the motion on the floor? Seeing, Councillor Reinhardt.
Hi, thanks. I was just wondering if there has been any damage to the ball fields in the past.
We had experienced last season a reoccurring theme of off-highway vehicles being able to access the area. And we have had a lot of investment into the ball fields over the last many years. So we just want to make sure that we're protecting that by enclosing the fields so we can make sure we don't experience damage due to misuse and have to then go forward with any sort of corrective action there. So this is just a risk that has been identified, and this would look to address that concern.
Is there somebody willing to bring forward that motion? Oh, Councillor Hubley.
Thank you. To Deputy Mayor Chastity Vino and members of council, I move that Municipal Council award RFP 2025-01-400 Mark Ballfield backstops, fencing, and dugout adjustments to Eastern Fence Erectors Limited in the amount of $122,900, excluding HST, as approved in the 2025-2026 capital budget. Nice.
Is there a seconder on that motion? Seconded
second.
by Mayor McLean Weil. Discussion on the motion. Seeing none, all those in favor? Councillor Brooks, I'll just get you to say for the record.
Yes, in favor?
Thank you. Opposed? Motion is carried unanimously. Thank you. Moving down to 7.2, award of RFP 2025-01-401, wastewater treatment options study 2025, Conqueror Bank in New Germany. And we have Tyler Richardson and Stephen Pace from the engineering department to bring that forward. Thank you.
Good morning, Council. We are presenting on behalf of Larry Feener this presentation for RFP 2025-01-401 Wastewater Treatment Option Study, Conqueror Bank and New Germany. The municipality requested proposals from engineering consultants to study, explore, and evaluate alternate wastewater treatment technologies that could complement or replace existing technologies at our Conqueror Bank and New Germany wastewater treatment facilities. The selected consultant will assess existing technologies, evaluate emerging innovations, and provide recommendations for the most suitable technology for wastewater treatment at both sites. The selected consultant will determine the most appropriate financial model as well, and provide recommendations on how MODL could implement a new financial model if one was deemed more appropriate. Of the 3 proposals received, eXp Services Inc. received the highest overall score and had the second lowest price of $79,969 plus HST. The approved 2025-26 capital budget is $125,000. The request for proposals was issued May 14th, 2025 and closed June 20th, 2025. The RFP requested proposals from 3 qualified consultants from our standing offer list to complete the study. 3 proposals were received by CBCL Limited, eXp Services Incorporated, and Stantec before the closing date and time. Technical proposals were evaluated by 3 MODL staff and were based on the criteria outlined in the RFP. As stated, the approved 2025-26 capital budget allocated $125,000 for the study. The projected cost, including a 15% contingency and net HST, is $95,512. The project is expected to be completed within budget. So our recommendation that Council authorize staff to award RFP 2025-01-401 2025 wastewater treatment option study, Conqueror Bank in New Germany to eXp Services Incorporated for an amount of up to $95,512, including a 15% contingency and net HST.
Thank you for that. Do we have any questions before bringing the motion forward? Councillor Moore.
Thank you. I'm wondering why Shore Drive, and I know we're doing upgrades right now, through you to them. I know we're doing upgrades right now to Exit 12 sewer treatment plant, but I'm wondering why Shore Drive is not in this mix.
They actually are. Shore Drive and Conqueror Bank.
Shore Drive would be included as part of the Conqueror Bank. That's part of
Okay.
their collection system. So it would
Okay.
look at that whole facility
All
and
right,
collection
may
system.
I? And when it says, it says here, new financial model if one was deemed more appropriate. Now, right now, it was long-term, a long time coming, but way back, a global rate was introduced. It seems to be working fine. Does this mean maybe a global rate would not be deemed for all our municipal waste sites, except, of course, for Headville, because that's different? But, like, do you have any ideas what you're looking for?
So I'll take this one. I think looking at all options, both from the technical side as well as the financial side, what other models are, depending on what comes up with from a different type of technology, there may be other opportunities for other funding models, and that'll be all part of the study.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Smith.
Yeah, I just had a question on the financial models as well. I was trying to sort out what a user pay model might look like, and just wondering if I don't know much about wastewater treatment, having lived on a private well all my life, I think. Yeah, I'm wondering what a user pay model would look like, if it's commonly used throughout the province. I know that CBRM was considering that model, and is it around consumption, like paying for what you consume rather than the, like as Councillor Moore said, the global rate?
It wouldn't be around consumption because it's not metered. Typically, if you it's a water that's metered, so wastewater isn't metered typically and individual, so it wouldn't be based on that. But I think there's quite a few different models depending on what technologies, and it's quite a broad study at this point. I think when the council requested the study, we looked at anything from individual septic systems all the way to all the technologies available in wastewater treatment. So it's a fairly broad study. So there's going to be a lot of different potential financial models come out of it as well. That helps. I think it's going to be an exploratory thing going in for both systems, both in Concro Bank and in New Germany. And there's going to be two different scenarios because one's a larger system than the other one. But they're both aging facilities and needing updates, so we want to make sure that we're going down the right road. That helps.
Mayor McLean-Weil.
Yeah, thank you for this. I'm really interested to see what comes from this. The request for proposal came from the standing order. I'm not sure what that term is. All of a sudden it's gone from my head, but the list of approved consultants that we could use. And I'm just wondering your level of confidence in their ability to provide innovative and innovative options for us.
I think we're fairly comfortable. We have a knowledge of what each firm on our standing offer has a background in, and most of these firms have solid backgrounds in wastewater. And I know EXP, when they were awarded the Cookville wastewater treatment expansion, they explored a number of different options for that project. I think they looked at 6 different technologies and explored the implications of each one, and decided to go with the membrane system, which is what we had originally in the original plant. So we feel quite comfortable that they're actually we've had a very good experience with the EXP with the Cookville plant and that analysis, so we felt quite comfortable with them on that.
Can I get somebody to bring forward the motion? Councillor Bell.
To Deputy Mayor Vino and members of MODL Council, I move that Municipal Council award RFP 2025-01-401, 2025 wastewater treatment option study for Concro Bank and New Germany to EXP Services Incorporated for an amount up to $95,512, including a 15% contingency and net HST, is approved in the 2025-26 capital budget. I so move.
Thank you. Is there a seconder on that motion? Seconded by Councillor Moore. Discussion on the motion. Mayor McLean-Weil.
It's just a question. When do we think we'll have a report back? Did I miss that in the?
We do hope to, we're getting it started early and because we want the outcome to be known for the capital budgeting period coming up. That's our main driver. This is actually one of our last, as a department, one of our last studies to get underway. So we should have it a good sense by, we start budgeting in November, December. So we should have a good sense by that time.
Seeing no other questions, all those in favor?
In favor?
Councillor Brooks, thank you. Opposed? Motion is carried unanimously. We have no presentations on the agenda today. There's no consideration, of course.
7.3, right here. You marked it.
Oh. Oh. I'm just wanting to make the morning flow, apparently, and skip over one completely. My apologies. We do have one other item under awarding of tenders, award of RFP 2025-01-403, Land Conservation Strategy, and we have B. Jane from Planning Services coming forward with that. And I apologize for skipping right over you.
No problem. Good morning, everyone. Yeah, I'm presenting on recommendation for the award of the said RFP for the land conservation strategy. And the recommendation is to award the RFP to CBCL Limited for a total cost of $89,000, $167.50 plus HST for the completion of the land conservation strategy project. The RFP itself was issued on June 12th, 2025 and closed on July 8th. Total of 6 proposals were received, 5 submitted within the deadline. The 6th one that we received was from Nova Scotia Woodland, Working Woodland Trust that was received after the deadline and therefore disqualified. Following careful evaluation, CBCL Limited emerged as the top-ranked proponent, offering the most robust and strategically comprehensive proposal. The scope of work includes evaluating all the municipal lands at a parcel level and identifying and prioritizing high-value conservation areas, and also integrating the ecological, social, climate, and cultural criteria in the scoring those parcels. And part of the strategy would also be to establish a work plan how to conserve up to 20% of municipal lands by the end of this decade as identified objective under our local climate change action plan. And the strategy would also include GIS mapping tools, economic implementation plans, and figuring out what policy instruments could municipality use to achieve those objectives. The evaluation committee comprised of 3 scoring MODL staff and 2 non-scoring Clean Foundation staff. In terms of submissions, we received 5 proposals, one from CBCL, from Global Conservation Solutions, from Stantec, from Upland Studios, and from Forward Creative, plus Design Point, which they have submitted a joint proposal. And in terms of ranking, CBCL ranked the number 1, followed by the others as shown in the table in the report. Among all submissions, CBCL's proposals clearly distinguish itself as the most complete, technically rigorous, and strategically aligned with Modal's conservation goals and RFP requirements. CBCL demonstrated a comprehensive understanding of Modal's needs, combining technical precision and with practical implementation. The methodology they proposed was grounded in systematic conservation planning, best practices, and it was also built around a parcel-level GIS-based scoring system that integrates very well ecological, social, and cultural values. And overall, the evaluation committee believes the CBCL proposal is the only one to offer a complete, integrated, and implementable solution that responds directly to MODL's conservation mandate. In regards to budget, CBCL was also one of the offers that surpassed the budget what council had budgeted for this project in this fiscal year. Council had approved $50,000 for this project, but CBCL budget exceeds, or proposal exceeds the budget by approximately $39,167 plus HST. Council could fund this additional amount from sustainability reserve should they choose to proceed with the staff's recommendation. Alternatively, council may award the contract to the second-ranked proponent, which is Global Conservation Solutions, or any other proponent as deemed appropriate. In conclusion, the evaluation committee recommends awarding the RFP to CBCL, whose proposal offers the strongest value overall and the technical depth and alignment with Modal's conservation goals. While the cost proposal exceeds the original budget, the long-term benefits, usability, and strategic clarity of their approach make CBCL the most qualified partner to deliver this work.
Thank you, Abhi. We'll open the floor up for discussion. Councillor Oikel.
Yes, I'm just wondering, are they going to do boots on the ground? Are they going to go personally to all of our properties that we own to look at them? Or is it just going to be kind of like what they did before when it came to the flooding? Right? Because we kind of had a little bit of a problem with that, with the same company. And I'm also not really sure what you mean by GIS. What does that entail, the GIS mapping? If you could also, my two questions, please.
So regarding the first question, there won't be any boots on the ground. It is going to be primarily relying on the Landsat imageries or GIS data available through other sources like provincial data sets or federal data sets or through other GIS-based data sets. And the reason being, so they're not going to go on each parcel on the municipality's lands. They're basically going to evaluate all properties, but using virtual GIS data sets and analysis and look at what is the conservation value of each parcel. So when I say GIS, it basically means Geographical Information System, but more than that, what it means is, you may recall from the small exercise that we did during the tax sale property evaluation. So what we do is, any parcel in a property, we overlay all the layers such as wetlands, old growth forest, or if there is any development on any parcel, and then assign a conservation score to that parcel. So what would happen is, it is going to streamline in many ways, help us easily identify which properties are of high conservation value in the municipality, and that would also be of low cost for the municipality to conserve in the long run. Right now, we don't have any mechanism in place. It's mostly a reactive approach, and we don't really know where. So, for example, we have a target whether we want to conserve 20% of land, but we don't really know where is that high-value land across the municipality. So this consultant is going to help us identify and prioritize those properties.
I'm assuming it is just the municipality's property, or is it just all the property throughout the whole municipality?
Throughout the whole municipality, all the properties.
All the properties.
All the properties.
Okay, all right, so I misunderstood. I thought it was just our properties, because, so I'm just wondering why we're doing everybody's, because we don't own everybody's, and other people have their right to do whatever they want with their property, whether it's to conserve it or to not to conserve it. So I'm just kind of questioning that as well, why we're going to spend more than the $50,000 that we budgeted. And I'm thinking it would be better to do just our own property, and I'm just wondering how many of our own properties we have, because that's really all we can control, really, is our own, right? So I'm just kind of questioning the whole thing, really.
So why do we care about properties all throughout? I think the simple answer is, so think of it this way, like anytime proposal comes in, or like anytime a property goes on for sale, and we are tasked to, like, should we fund this organization to acquire that land? And we're like, we don't know, we need to look into. So we go into that assessment mode. So we evaluate, is there any conservation value on that parcel or not? By doing this exercise automatically inside for all the properties, we would already have that information upfront. So this does not imply we are going to force somebody to sell their property, but there are many landowners who may be interested in self-conserving their properties, or who may be interested in donating their parcels, or who may be, or even like organizations themselves may be interested in partnering. They could be interested in entering into conservation easement agreements. So there are many avenues how we could protect and conserve properties beyond just our municipally owned lands. And this effort is going to help us simplify the processes in many ways, to have that expertise in-house to be able to tell, oh, this property values this much and it has this much high conservation value. So staff could confidently recommend to council, oh yes, we should invest this much money into acquiring that land. But if through our internal analysis we figured that, well, it doesn't really have that much conservation value, it's probably not a good idea to invest in or contribute. If you may recall from, for example, in the past that has happened multiple times, where organization would come in and they would request council to invest 50% of the funding to acquire a certain parcel of land. And it goes back to the staff, and staff looks to evaluate, and we don't really know, like, what is the value of that property, what is the conservation value, what are the layers that overlay on that parcel. So it's going to simplify that process. Plus, it would also help, because if we would have already identified what are our priorities, so although we won't release like parcel level data publicly, but if we release high level thematic maps, what it does help is in helping these organizations to actively look out for opportunities in those high priority areas, right? So it is going to help us build those long lasting partnerships with this land trust, several land organizations, or even in the province. So it helps streamline the process and simplifies the processes. I don't know if that answers your question.
Councillor Brooks.
Thank you. Building on what Councillor Oikel just mentioned, I have some concerns about this data that would be collected on private property. I'm unsure how that data will be then held, and if that will be public, and how that data could then impact individuals' land prices, land value, their insurance prices. I'm concerned about that, and I'd like to hear from you on that, and then I just have a follow-up question, please.
Yes, thank you for the question. And that is a very well known concern, and we were clear in our RFP too. This data is not meant to be made public. This data is rather meant to be used in-house by our staff. It will be stored within our GIS data sets. So we would know internally what each parcel has, what conservation values, what each parcel's cost could be, what conservation mechanism should we use, should we need to acquire that particular parcel. So all of that data would not be made public. What would be made public at the most would be high-level thematic maps. So what that does is it averages out all. So for a good example is Halifax Green Network Plan. So what they have done is they have put out like a high-level maps of the municipality. Where are those hotspot of conservation, high conservation value lands across the municipality? But that doesn't give out the details on property level or parcel level. So it is not going to impact in any ways property values per se or insurance or anything. So none of that data is going to be released. But internally, this data is going to be very helpful for us for a variety of reasons, to proactively targeting high conservation lands, also to easily assess anytime a proposal come in our way, to easily be able to tell, oh yes, this is what the conservation value is of that particular parcel. Should we recommend council to invest money, or should we be interested in conserving that land or not, or for a variety of other reasons.
You had a follow-up, Councillor Brooks?
Yes, thank
Please
you.
go ahead.
Just on a different point, Abid, you mentioned that part of this process will have an economic implementation strategy. I presume that's how we would financially go about the conservation. In this process, do we also have an economic impact assessment on what this land conservation will do to periphery economic zones or people who are running businesses in those areas?
Partially. So it will have an economic analysis on how much it is going to cost, should be conserved, but it may not, like, what are you looking for economic impacts on local businesses? It should be, I didn't get your.
I'll give you an example. We just recently had quite a big piece of land in Riverport that was put aside for conservation. And I'm aware that there was no economic impact study on that in terms of our community there, in terms of travel times, in terms of possible new housing developments. So that land conservation, which is now there for perpetuity, had no economic impact, and I'm concerned about that.
Yeah. So I think that also is one of the objectives. If we were to identify high conservation values, so in a way it outweighs the benefits of, let's say, having a business in a, let's say, high growth or high old growth forest area. Let's say it's an intact natural parcel, I don't know, it's 10 acres land, and its conservation value score is like 10 out of 10. It would rather, even economically, it would rather be beneficial to conserve that land in perpetuity and give away low-scoring conservation land to that business. So it also helps if we had no inherent knowledge of this valuation, like we would not be able to tell. So if we would just look from naked eye, all the parcel would look of, oh yeah, if it has trees, we should protect it. Or if it has any kind of nature, we would not really have that inherent sense, how high is the conservation value of their particular parcel, if that helps.
It does. Thank you. Yeah, I may have some follow-ups in the future, but I appreciate that, Abid. Thank you.
Okay, so my list of speakers, up next is Councillor Smith.
Thanks, Abhi. I wondered if you could speak a bit to the strong integration of ecological, social, and climate resilience values that was one of the strengths of CBCL's proposal. And then I'll have a follow-up.
Yep. So one of the gaps so what we have done so far, we have identified 18 scoring, like I will say criterias, 18 scoring criterias, and the missing one is social, ecological, or community benefits, and it is not integrated into those scores. So what we have asked from the consultant is to do consultant and also partially led by Clean Foundation through CCC program. They're going to do an extensive public engagement to capture those, basically what public sees as valuable properties that they would want to protect, and also protect lands that are of high community benefits. And it's mostly like local context. So they would not be able to capture this through just looking at GIS data virtually. They would need to have boots on the ground, and that would be led by Clean Foundation as a separate component, would not have to be the consultant. But they will integrate that into the scoring evaluation. But what they did really propose well were the methods they were going to use, how they were going to integrate those values. So be it when they will be engaging with African Nova Scotians or First Nations, what methods they will use. Or, for example, they proposed pairwise comparisons, or how, like other methodological tools they will use to integrate those values. So they were very comprehensive in terms of their proposal, which were not seen in other proposals from Stantec or the other proponents. So they were very good at that. Like how, so not just that, but like literally all the RFP requirements, they clearly laid out what are the steps they're going to take to help us achieve that RFP requirement. like not only reinstate what was already in the RFP, like, yes, we will help you do this, but how? That wasn't clear in all the proposals, but CBCL did a really good job in outlining clearly, these are the tools we are going to use, these are the methods we are going to use to help you achieve this objective.
Okay, thank you for that. I do think this is a really important strategy, and that, you know, that the extra cost is quite a jump. So I feel like we really need to be sure that we're getting value for that. I am disappointed that the proposal from Nova Scotia Working Woodlands Trust was late, because they are super local, and if there's boots on the ground, that's them. You know, they're in our woods, they're in our area, they're super local, and I'm so disappointed that they weren't considered as part of this. I think the other thing I wanted to point out was that last week in public input, someone raised the carbon map that the World Wildlife Federation had put out a few years ago. And I think this is, you know, one of the recommendations that came out with that carbon map was to come up with conservation strategies so that we're identifying those really important areas for us to conserve and their value as far as mitigating climate change and also adaptation. And I hope that adaptation is also a strong part of our conservation strategy, and that we're looking for those lands that are kind of like the nature-based solutions that we need in order to be resilient to some of the severe weather and wildfires and that kind of thing that we're facing these days. But yeah, thank you for the presentation and strategy for us to get right.
Yeah, if I may just add, I think it's absolutely crucial, as you mentioned, but it is also, if you may recall, Municipal Council adopted land conservation policy this beginning of this year that clearly outlines the values that we have for carbon capture, carbon sinks, for wildlife adaptation. So all of those values are captured in that policy. It will act as a foundation for the consultant to, as they work on developing the strategy. Like, these are the things we will be looking for in our lands that we conserve for in perpetuity.
Mayor McLean-Weil.
I don't usually like proposals that exceed budget, but in this case, I'm going to speak in support of it. I think we did adopt a land conservation strategy earlier this year, as Abid has just said, and to me, this is a tool that we will then use to actually implement a strategy, and it gives us a roadmap. It gives us the data, the hard facts about what are the lands that are going to be most in line with that strategy. And if you think to the past of our councils, there's been a long tradition here of acquiring land for parks and recreation and preservation of special places. And we know that it's a high priority of our residents: access to water, preservation of the land that we have, and protection of the land. And to me, this is a really critical tool that our staff will use now and into the future to evaluate what is the value attached from a conservation point of view to that piece of land. So for us and future councils, there will be a documented, data-based piece of information and report that can be generated to provide good information to make a decision, whether it be working with one of our partners, whether it be MICA, whether it be another community group that comes forward and asks us to be a partner and invest in a project, or whether we want to be the sole funder of it. This gives us that basis to make a good decision, because we will have the data then to evaluate where it fits into our strategy. So I'm really very supportive of this, and I think the questions and concerns people are raising are legitimate, but I think we have to think about how this is going to provide data that will help us make really good decisions now and for future councils to make good decisions.
Councillor Burns.
Thank you. I just wanted to ask this question primarily to hammer home this point, and building on what our mayor just said about the data. This really gives us a baseline of data for which we can make decisions, but ultimately the decision on whether land is going to be conserved or whether we're going to purchase land or how this is going to go ultimately rests with council in the way that we do it now. There's no change in that the decision-making body is council. This just gives us the baseline information, so we're not doing it on an ad hoc basis that may be perceived as a little that could swing one way or the other. This is just putting pieces in place so we can make decisions. We can balance economic interests versus conservation interests. We can balance regional interests and conservation. We still have that power, correct?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Councillor Moore.
Thank you. I'm a little confused. When we passed the land conservation strategy, I myself also thought it was our municipal lands. And apparently I was wrong in assuming that. My biggest problem here is I understand why we're doing it for the future, but we are evaluating every parcel of land in the municipality or just coastal? May I, through you?
So all the parcels.
All the parcels.
Inland, coastal, all the parcels. So when we say evaluating, as I was answering to Councillor Brooks' question, it is more for like our internal assessments, which we really need to know.
Yes.
Like if we would not have that information, it becomes challenging to recommend to council should we invest in that property or not. Like we would not know otherwise, if that helps.
And if I may continue. So if there is, after this study is done, if there's a parcel of land, say in, I'm just going to pick Lower Branch, okay, which is very close to the hub of this urban area, and it's privately owned. We have it on our study that it's very high on the conservancy list, but the private, this is the key, the private owner of that land wants to sell it for a development or something like that. Are we going to go in and tell this private landowner that he cannot sell this his piece of land because it's on the conservancy, high up on the conservancy? I'm just wondering if we're, are you? Okay, maybe I could get an answer from staff.
Yeah, so there's not going to be any kind of interference like how private entities are selling, buying lands on their own. So this is mostly pertaining to if the private landowner comes to municipality, they're like, we want to donate land to the municipality.
Okay.
And we'll be like, should we accept or manage that land for the future? Or let's say if they want to partner with any land conservation organizations to protect that land in future, or they want to enter into conservation easement agreements. So there's variety of things that the private landowner may want to do with that particular parcel. And having these tools in place, we would be able to confidently tell, oh yes, this has a high conservation value. We should be able to support that. And also, if the land is already developed, chances are it is going to score very low anyway. Like, right? If it is undeveloped land, and then the situation could be different.
Okay. Also, because I know what I'm going to hear, it's like we're piling it on too high and telling the private landowners what they can do, especially with the land use planning coming down the pipes. What if someone sold that piece of land and all of a sudden, like, and you say we can't tell them that they can't, but when that developer comes here for a building permit, are we going to say we cannot give you this building permit because it's high on our conservation study?
That is again a very good question, but no. We would not by any means tell when they come for any permit process, we are not going to tell them that you should not develop because it is ranking high on our internal conservation lands. That is not what it is meant for.
Okay, as long as that's relayed to the public properly, because I know what we're going to hear.
Councillor Reinhardt.
Thanks. I have a comment and then two questions. And I understand the point that was just raised, and I think I'm glad it was clarified. But just as another side, I know a lot of residents who would appreciate having knowledge about their properties, and if there was a conservation value that they could know about and perhaps do something on their own if they decided to. So I see a value in having that knowledge for the whole municipality. And my question is, well, I think this is very important. We do need a strategy. We have a goal of reaching the 20% of land conserved. So this is basically a way to get there. So it's very important that we have it. I was just wondering if you saw any benefit to the global conservation company where they're more specialized, if you saw any benefits there that there may be where they're all about just kind of creating this kind of work. So if you saw any benefit there. And should I ask my other question now? Okay. And then I was also thinking that a really important part of this strategy is going to be incorporating local knowledge. So I was just wondering, with the CBCL and I guess also global conservation, did they mention how they would incorporate like local knowledge or stakeholder collaboration or anything like that?
Yeah. To answer to your second question, the Global Conservation Solutions also had tons of relevant experience when it comes, because this is their main field, what they do. Their experience is mostly towards biodiversity or in terms of habitat or wildlife. Those in the past too, they have developed conservation strategies, but mostly for species. But not necessarily for doing ecological scoring of all the parcels, so they don't have that experience. The things they lacked in their RFP proposal was mostly, they were not really in depth in their methodology, like what exactly steps they were going to use. That is where they scored fairly low in comparison to CBCL. CBCL clearly laid out, for example, these are the methods we are going to use to help you achieve these objectives. Well, on the other side, Global Conservation, they were fairly low in technical implementation details, how they were going to make that happen. In terms of your third question, like how both the companies are going to integrate, again, like CBCL was very detailed, like how they were going to do so. So, for clarification, so the public engagement piece of this strategy will be led by Clean Foundation. So they are, if you remember, so they are also working with us through part of the CCC program, which is Community Climate Capacity Program. They offer us staff services, which is funded by the province. So they helped us develop the land conservation policy, which we adopted in the beginning of this year. They're furthering they're further helping us in this process too. So they will lead the public engagement component, which will be conducted in the fall. What that would include is workshops, some community mapping, basically gathering feedback from residents and also other community experts who may want to provide their feedback. Oh, which parcels should we protect, or which parcels in their neighborhood should we want to conserve? All of that feedback that will be captured, and this consultant's responsibility will be to integrate into this scoring. Like, for example, if whatever the information has been gathered through the public engagement, what are the tools they are going to use to ensure there's a fair evaluation and the fair scores are given and with unbiased. And in that regard, too, I think CBCL did a really great job in clearly outlining the methods they will be using, as opposed to other proponents, including global conservation. They were not as clear how exactly they are going to do that. Yeah.
Are there any other members that have not yet spoken before we move to our second round of questions? I just have one comment/question. In the previous council term, this would definitely have come to use, as we've had groups come forward wanting us to go in with the purchase of land or working with other organizations. With this policy, you mentioned that it'll put us in a better position when groups or people come forward wanting to donate or work together on land. Will we be looking at lands that are for sale as well, or just being open when people come to us to go in with the purchase of sale or any kind of agreement?
So again, a good question. And this time it would be both. So that is also part of the process. So because if we have already identified lands, so it would not just merely now moving forward be a reactive approach. We were still sitting and waiting for proponents to come in our way and request funds. But this time we could also actively ourselves go after the properties. If there is a very high conservation, good coastal property, riparian zone that could, if we conserve that, could protect future flooding, like there could be many benefits. But if that opportunity comes in, this strategy is going to help us. Okay, so what are the conservation mechanisms we could use? Maybe we partner with any conservation group, or maybe we request province, but yes, this time it will be both active, proactive, as well as reactive, which we already have been doing.
And with your response, that could also come in handy if there was land we wanted for public use, such as the Oakland Conservation Area. This study would carry some weight and teeth with protecting space and making it there for the public, is what I understand.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So we have Councillor Oigel, Smith, Burns, and Brooks. Councillor Oigel.
Thank you very much. So I just want to say that I wasn't impressed with the cost, right? But I'm better understanding it since you've explained the part that the Clean Foundation is going to play in it, and that they will be kind of subcontracted by CBCL to, do that boots on the ground.
Just for clarification, so CBCL, Clean Foundation has a direct contract with us. Okay. So for the next 3 years, through part of CE's Community Climate Capacity Program. But other than that, it's all right.
Okay, so they're already going to do that, and then they're going to give that information to CBCL. Now, why could they then not? So now that changes my brain again. So then why could they not, through you, Deputy Mayor, give that information to Globus or to Stantec? And they do the same thing. Why could that not happen?
So, yeah, exactly. So the right consultant who is going to do all the other work, so getting the public feedback from Clean Foundation is only one piece, but the other work that the consultant is expected to develop GIS-based tool for municipality that would be used internally, standard operating procedures, like all the other things. So the consultant has to be able to do that. So we picked that CBCL is the rank #1 who could do that. So we thought this would be a good combination. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Councillor Smith.
I just had a comment and a question. There have been times when we've missed like I forget the term, is it environmentally significant properties? We've missed them in the tax sale because we didn't have this kind of tool to identify lands, right? And maybe you could speak to a specific example of that, just so that we can have that in our minds as an example of how this policy would be helpful. And then the other question I have is just to drill down a little deeper into CBCL's approach in terms of working with Mi'kmaq communities, because I know that that's been a challenge for us in some of our work. And I would really like to know if they had anything specific about how they would partner with Indigenous land guardians or anyone to bring that knowledge to our work.
To answer to your first question, there have been one example, like West Havers Pond is a known example where it was under provincial but environmentally significant areas zone, but the parcel went down to sale through tax sale. The wetland was drained, infilled, but like following that, I think the council direction was that that should not happen again. We should have some policy framework in place. We should have so that cases are captured before tax sale happens. So we adopted this policy this year, and if you recall, we also evaluated all of our tax sale properties this years before they went on for public auction. So this helps prevent those situations moving forward. In regards to what specific was proposed by it, I don't recall that on top of my head. I apologize, but I'm happy to follow up through an email to provide you with more info. What was proposed by CPCL? Yes, if that helps.
Councillor Burns.
Thank you. Just like a comment / sort of soapbox here. As we're talking about this, I think what's really important to remember is what we're doing is we're putting in place a process for which we evaluate land as a council that we may wish to purchase or receive as a donation or somehow otherwise enter into an arrangement to protect. This is something that builds a process that makes it less ad hoc. It brings much more fairness as we evaluate properties versus one another. It allows us to better allocate and budget our resources in order to do that, forward-looking on what we're willing to do. And it just fosters, I think, better trust with the public that we're making decisions less on an ad hoc basis. For instance, it's not Councillor Burns here saying, behind my house there's some great woodland, we should preserve that, while we may also be missing out on some parcels that would otherwise come up for sale along the river that we would want to preserve, or better old growth stands that we would want to preserve for the public. So, you know, it's very fair for us to be looking at this and saying, is this the right proponent for the job? And like that, I think that's something we're getting better at doing through this discussion. But I think fundamentally here, and for the public that's listening, this is about giving us that baseline information. So when something comes to council, or so when we are faced with an opportunity with a tight deadline, like something is listed privately or like through MLS, through realtors, that we're not just making an ad hoc decision because someone saw it on Viewpoint, hey, do we want to buy this? There's stuff identified that says, hey, this popped up and we've already identified this as a priority. So we know that as our internal processes, we'll be bringing it to council to authorize a bid instead of it having to be sort of done off the side of a desk and missing the opportunities. And I think that's a really important point to hammer home to the public. This is us saying we want to conserve land, but here's sort of how we need some information to evaluate it. It's not just my gut feeling versus your gut feeling versus someone else's gut feeling, and then that will allow the public to trust us that we're then balancing our budget versus our conservation priorities versus everything else as those opportunities come forward with a bit of information. So I think both for the public and for us here, I think it's really important that we do this. Councillor Brooks.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Pardon me, I had my question answered, so I'm good. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Hubley.
I just have a statement here, because at the beginning of this, I was very undecided because of the cost and wondering exactly what the information was going to be used for. I have the same concerns as Councillor Moore. But because I respect the knowledge of Councillor Burns, I'm going to vote in favor. I just really hope that this will not be used against residents in the future to dictate what they can and cannot do on their property.
And I can also further clarify that, if that helps, this is not by any means to mandate anything. Just because in our evaluation a parcel has come out to be high conservation value does not mean we can mandate that landowner, like, you should conserve. This is just for our evaluation, for as very well versed by Councillor Burns. but those are like bylaw zoning and those requirements that can dictate what a landowner can or cannot do with their, but this strategy is not meant for that. This is not by any means is going to mandate anything. Yeah.
Councillor Burns.
Thank you, and I'd like to thank Councillor Hubley. The light shades haven't changed, that's just me blushing, so thank you for the compliments. In one point, I skipped over in my soapbox there that I think we should reiterate to the public as well. This is an information gathering exercise. It doesn't regulate the public. Where we would choose or choose not to regulate private use of land will become is through our land use planning process, something that we've already been engaged in and something we'll see again in the fall. So, you know, they're related in that they both talk about land, but what we're really hoping to empower residents with decisions about their own land, we're actually going to be looking at that through land use regulation or lack thereof, or however we want to see that. That is the mechanism in which decisions about private land are to be used. It really wouldn't be about this, and I just thought it was important to have that on the record.
Yeah. I think we've had some really good discussion on this, so thank you to council members and to Abhi for answering all the questions. We do have a staff recommendation. There are other options with proponents, but is there somebody willing to bring a motion forward? Mayor McLean-Weil.
To Deputy Mayor Vino and Council, that Municipal Council award RFP 2025-01-403 Land Conservation Strategy to CBCL Limited for $89,167.50 plus HST for the completion of the Land Conservation Strategy project as approved in the 2025-2026 capital budget, with the additional funds of $39,167.50 plus HST to be paid from the Sustainability Reserves Fund.
Is there a seconder on that motion? Seconded by Councillor Oikel. Any further discussion on the motion? Councillor Smith.
I just wanted to ask about the financial implications of drawing from the Sustainability Reserves Fund. Could you talk a bit about what that fund is for, where that money comes from, and maybe what we may be taking, are we taking away from other projects or our ability to do other work?
So we do have
I don't want to give any misinformation.
Yeah. So we do have our Director of Finance coming forward, Elena Wenzel, who can probably speak to that.
Certainly, thank you, Madam Chair, through to Councillor Smith. So the Sustainability Reserve was a fund that we set up, or Municipal Council set up several years ago, and had made a determination that $350,000 a year would go to this fund through the capital budget. And if the projects, if projects weren't spending it. So if we had a sustainability project, for example, like the solar panels at the Conquerall Bank treatment plant, if that spent the money, then there would be no monies to go to the fund. So every year, what we do is we look at how much has been spent on those sustainability projects, and if there's any unspent monies, it goes to the fund. But in turn, as projects come up, because it's earmarked for sustainability, then this fund would be used against that. So this year there was a strategy, a sustainability strategy, so there was a $50,000 budget, and that's where those monies came from. So those monies are only earmarked based on the projects within the sustainability envelope. So there is monies available in that fund to fund, to cover this overage. So the suggestion was that that's where the money was coming from to do the project. So the budget overage would come from there as well.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? Okay, we'll call for the question. All those in favor? Councillor Brooks? Oh, you're on mute, so I'll just... You're in favor. Opposed? Motion is carried unanimously. We'll take a quick 10-minute recess, and when we return, we'll move on to recommendations from committees and boards. Thank you. Mayor, your mic is on. Okay, welcome back, council members. We'll move along in our agenda, and we have no presentations or scheduled times for those. There's no consideration of correspondence, so it brings us to recommendations from committees and boards. And we have 3 recommendations that came out of the Finance Committee that was held on July 8th. If you're looking for further discussion amongst council members, you will find majority of that during that meeting. So 10.1.1, first reading, repeal and replace bylaw 018, building code bylaw. And we do have Graham Hopkins, our inspection services manager, with us, if there is any further discussion on that. Graham, do you want to give just a quick summary on the motion that's coming forward today on this?
Sure. So the highlights of this, we had some housekeeping changes, of course, but the 3 main changes from this is the removal of the building fees from the bylaw and moving them to the fee policy, adding the requirements for location certificates, and adding expiry dates to building permits. Those are the 3 main things that we're doing here.
Thank you for that synopsis. Is there somebody willing to bring forward this motion? Councillor Oikel.
To Deputy Mayor Vino and members of council, I move that Municipal Council accept the recommendation of the Finance Committee and repeal and replace bylaw 018 Building Code bylaw and conduct first reading of the new bylaw 018 as presented effective January the 1st, 2026, and give notice of its intention to conduct second reading at the September 9th, 2025 council meeting, and I so move.
Is there a seconder on that motion? Seconded by Mayor McLean-Weil. Discussion on the motion. Councillor Oikel.
Yeah, during the Finance Committee, I questioned the change to 1 year, if you recall, or anyone who's listening, I had questioned that. And I did talk to different people, and they already thought it was. So, so I'm good with the 2 now. So I just wanted to say that. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Councillor Brooks?
In favor.
Thank you. Opposed? Motion is carried unanimously. The next item, 10.1.2, amendments to policy 058, fees regarding building fees. And Graham, if you could do another summary of that discussion, that would be great.
Sure. The big thing is with our shared service and our new building software, how we are currently calculating building fees didn't work with the system. So we're moving to how several of the other municipalities calculate it. And that's by cost of construction as opposed to a square footage charge. So we've done our calculations, and basically what we're doing is we're just trying to keep it the same cost. We're just doing it a different method of calculation. So right now, what we're proposing is a 72 cents per $1,000 of estimated cost of construction, and that's going to be for all of our whether it's a renovation, new, demolition, anything like that. So, or sorry, not demolition, but everything else. Before, it was a different rate for every type of construction you were doing. So that's our big thing. So.
Thank you. Can we have a motion put on the floor? Mayor McLean-Weil.
To Deputy Mayor Vino and members of council, I move that Municipal Council accept the recommendations of the Finance Committee and amend Policy 058 fees by adding building permit fees that will come into effect on January 1st, 2026.
Is there a seconder on that motion? Seconded by Councillor Reinhardt. Discussion on the motion. Seeing none, all those in favor?
In favor.
Councillor Brooks in favor as well. Opposed? Motion is carried unanimously. The next item is 10.1.3, amendments to policy 058 fees regarding credit card fees. And we have Elena Wenzel, our Director of Finance.
Thank you, Madam Chair, to the Chair and members of Council. As you may recall, on July the 8th, at your Finance Committee meeting, the committee made a motion that they would amend our Policy 58 to include a 1% processing fee for credit card payments and give 7 days' notice of Council intention to approve the amendments to that policy. There has been some misinformation that staff had, and unfortunately, that's changed our recommendation. We are now recommending that the fee be 2%. The misinformation that we did have was that the processing company's fee was in addition to what the credit cards themselves already charged. So those fees can be between 1.6 and 2%. It depends on the type of card, but most generally, MasterCard and Visa are around those numbers. So what we thought was, well, 2% would probably capture the average costs of credit card processing. We thought we could also revisit that when we do our budgets next year to ensure it's still appropriate and meets the goal of not adding these additional processing fees to the municipal budget.
Thank you. Can I get somebody to bring forward the motion? Councillor Bell.
To Deputy Mayor Vino and members of MODL Council, I move that Municipal Council amend Policy 058 fees to include a 2% processing fee for credit card payments as presented. I so move.
Is there a seconder on that motion? Seconded by Councillor Hubley. Discussion on the motion. Councillor Bell.
I think this is a very fair consideration. There's no reason why the general public should pay or subsidize the fees for those who decide to use credit card payments.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Councillor Brooks?
In favor.
In favor. Opposed? Motion is carried unanimously. And I'll just reiterate again, if anybody's looking for more details of the council discussion, the motions just previously passed fall under the Finance Committee meeting that was held on July 8th, 2025. So we'll move down to staff reports and Recreation, Parks, and Tourism. We have item 11.1.1, Quality of Life Report, and Trudy Payne, our Director of Parks, Recreation, and Tourism, will be presenting on this item. And it'll just be a moment while we bring up her presentation.
Okay, good morning, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, and Council. This morning I'll be presenting a PowerPoint that provides a high-level overview of the detailed report that was submitted in the agenda package pertaining to one of Council's strategic priorities, which is quality of life. When Council set this priority, there was a discussion to maintain and improve programs and services that would contribute to affordability and quality of life of residents, help address loneliness, reconnect with the community, improve social inclusion, and to celebrate and preserve communities. Building a strong community fabric aligns well with quality of life, which was outlined in the communications and engagement priority. In fact, when I was doing some research and putting with the team, and I should mention that there was a team working on the quality of life consisting of Alex Demerick, our Deputy CAO, Sandra Chalice, who was with the Recreation Department, and Kelly Cunningham, our active living coordinator. So I'm just the person up here speaking to you today, but there certainly was a team. So when we were doing some of the research and looking at the different models across the country, it kind of dawned on us that in essence, the municipality has created your own quality of life framework through your strategic priorities. And council may want to consider moving quality of life in the center of your diagram and moving communications. That's just a recommendation or something for thought, because infrastructure and upgrades certainly contribute to quality of life, regional economic development, the climate change. And I'm sure everyone read that very detailed report and looked at the appendixes. You know, there's a number of domains and quality indicators that feed into quality of life, and certainly some of the strategic priorities that Council has outlined are some of those indicators. So just to give you a bit of an agenda for today of what I'll be covering is I'll be highlighting some definitions and key terms, very quickly going over the international, national, provincial, and municipal quality of life well-being frameworks, spending most of the presentation on what the municipality specifically is doing, what others in the municipality is doing that contributes to quality of life. In the report, I provided 4 examples from Nova Scotia, 3 of them being from Lunenburg County, of groups that made the conscious decision of providing something with the purpose of socially connecting people, which I think is important. Then some analysis from not from any research that's been conducted, just from our own experience of working in community development for 30 plus years. Then some assumptions and some conclusions, and then we'll open the floor for discussion. What next, and providing some alternatives and seeking some direction from council. So before I do the presentation, there's 2 questions, and I know you weren't provided to these in advance, but 2 questions I'd like for you to consider. So if you have paper and pen handy, if you want to jot notes as I go through the presentation to ask those questions at the end, that would be great. But as I go through the presentation, specifically around the points of what is currently happening in the municipality, what other actions would council like to undertake to increase social connections, social inclusion, and to build a stronger community fabric? And is there any additional information that you would need from staff to come back before you set a course of action pertaining to this particular priority, quality of life? So when council was discussing the quality of life, the meaning of words came up in discussion, a number of words. So we began to dig into this complex topic. We decided we would outline some of those key definitions so that we're kind of all on the same page. So quality of life, we've took this from the federal government towards a quality of life strategy for Canada. They have defined quality of life as the wealth and comfort of individuals based on both material and non-material factors that are important to people's lives, such as health, social connections, and material comfort. And for me, when I read that definition, both material and non-material factors really stood out to me. We borrowed the BMC's public health review on loneliness, but when I was doing the research, this certainly aligned with a number of the definitions from other folks as well. Loneliness has been described as an unpleasant feeling that people experience when they perceive their social relationships to be qualitatively and quantitatively inadequate. Oops. Too quick on the button. And then social isolation, and I know this was one of the definitions that was, or words that was tossed around a few times when we were setting this when council was setting the priority. Again, I've taken this from the BMC Public Health Review. It's described as a state in which the individual lacks a sense of belonging socially, lacks engagement with others, has a minimal number of social contacts, and they are deficient in fulfilling and quality relationships. So we've included the definition of community fabric because that was the terminology that council used specifically in their community and engagement strategic priority, which aligns well with the quality of life. And this was taken from the Sustainability Directory, which is defined as the interconnected network of social relationships, institutions, and shared values that support a community's ability to maintain ecological balance, economic viability, and social equity over time, which does feed very well into the quality of life discussion. And then social inclusion from the United Nations, the process by which efforts are made to ensure equal opportunities, that everyone, regardless of their background, can achieve their full potential in life. Such efforts include policies and actions that promote equal access to services, so public services, as well as enable citizens' participation in the decision-making process that affects their life. And then well-being, we took this right from the Canadian Index of Well-being, is described as the presence of the highest possible quality of life in its full breadth of expression, focused on, but not necessarily exclusive, to good living standards, robust health, sustainable environment, vital communities, an educated populace, balanced time use, high levels of democratic participation, and access to and participation in leisure and culture. And you'll see some of these words as I go through the presentation, and I'm sure you saw them in the report as well. So there are a number of countries and provinces and municipalities that have recognized that the gross domestic product is not the only measure that should be used when measuring quality of life and how rich and vital communities are. That is why a number of countries have developed quality of life or well-being indexes, including Canada. So while the indexes for each country may look different, there is great alignment in what they're trying to measure. And I'm not going to go through those. Those were part of the appendix. But I'm sure as you was reading, you could see there was great alignment. Engage in Nova Scotia is the organization, specifically in Nova Scotia, that has adopted the Canadian Wellbeing Index, which they have included 8 domains. And they are education, living standards, healthy populations, time use, leisure and culture, our environment, democratic engagement, and community vitality. It was this organization that conducted a survey of quality of life in 2019, and they do plan to conduct another survey in the fall of 2025 to gather that information. So it'll be interesting to see pre-COVID what people were saying about quality of life and what they'd be saying post-COVID around quality of life and has things changed or not. So that is the intent is to happen this fall. So to provide an overview of what is currently happening in the municipality of the District of Lunenburg, and I just want to reiterate, we understand and know that we probably didn't capture everything in this report, even though it was a lengthy report, but we do feel it provides council with a good picture of what is currently happening. And to demonstrate that, we made the decision to demonstrate this using the Engage Nova Scotia Wellbeing Index and the 8 domains. So the first domain that's listed is education, and as we know, the municipality plays very little role in the formal education system, but we do play a significant role in providing courses of interest as well as cultural learnings, particularly through our recreation programs. And examples could include anything from cooking classes, art classes, food handlers course, wilderness survival, and the list goes on if you look at the program brochure that's published quarterly. And I'd be remiss to say that we're not the only ones that do that. There are a number of organizations across the municipality that also provides courses of interest. And although high-speed internet could have fallen under a number of the domains, we listed it here as this service does support the many learners, children, youth, and adults. We also recognize, however, that internet supports businesses and economic growth. And I know that this was a significant priority of council a few years ago to make sure people had access to high-speed internet. So the second domain, living standards, housing was definitely outlined as an indicator when I was doing the research, and the municipality is in the process of developing a housing strategy to aid in making informed decisions concerning the housing stock. The current planning bylaw enables a variety of housing options, and as council is aware, you're in the process of adopting municipal-wide planning to cover 100% of the municipality, and is the intention to allow for all types of housing to help address the housing needs of today. There are also agencies that support housing, such as the South Shore Open Door Society and the South Shore Housing Action Coalition. Dry summers are certainly becoming more frequent. The municipality has adopted 2 programs to help with this. The first is the dry well program, where free water coupons are provided, and the potable water supply upgrade lending program to help residents permanently improve their potable water supply. The municipality also has a targeted property tax rebate program for residential property owners. This program helps lower-income households by providing property tax relief in the form of a rebate on their final tax bill. Public transit is also another indicator. The municipality has invested in Lunenburg County Wheels, providing door-to-door service to residents at a reduced rate due to the funds the municipality has invested in this service. Work is also being done in partnership with the town of Bridgewater to provide routes to Wildville, Headville, and Osprey Village. Food security is definitely an indicator of living standards, and there are a number of community groups such as our local food banks, our community cupboards and fridges, and associations like We Feed Lunenburg. And there are a number of other organizations that help deliver groceries, such as the YMCA, or deliver hot meals, such as the VON. St. Vincent de Paul is another example of an organization that helps provide support, particularly to those that need their day-to-day needs looked after, such as rent, electricity, and furniture. The Salvation Army is another organization that supports those in need substantially. The municipality has been working with the agricultural community with the goal of helping small-scale farming grow, which enhances food security, more local food for the citizens of the district, which adds to the resiliency to the food supply chain. Some of these initiatives that's been undertaken is the evaluation of a farmer's market for Osprey Village, feasibility study for a food hub for the district, financially supporting the feasibility study for the expansion of the Bridgewater's farmer's market, and there's Agriculture Days, which is held annually to celebrate small-scale farming and agricultural enterprises along the South Shore. And these initiatives align with the goal of growing the agriculture sector through collaboration, subject matter experts, education, and attraction of agriculture to the region. The municipality does play a significant role in influencing lifestyle behaviors that lead to healthy populations. There are a number of actions that the municipality itself has undertaken, such as employing an active living coordinator who implements the active living and active transportation strategies. Some of the initiatives under that role has been programs such as Cycling for All Abilities, walking programs to the nursing homes, getting those folks more engaged and more active, and bike scavenger hunts, which has been fairly popular this year. We've also partnered with the community hub that will see health practitioners at that facility, other than doctors, offering health services. And the municipality will have a community space in that hub that can be used for community programs, for recreation, for a wide number of things. We've also partnered in hiring a regional accessibility coordinator who has helped us develop an accessibility plan and provided some actions in that plan that we are currently implementing. And we are seeing improvements in accessibility. And one of, I guess, the most recent examples from a built environment perspective would be the kayak boat launch at Miller Point Peace Park. And of course, we do provide a variety of physically active and mental health programs. We have our equipment loan program, which is, there's a wide array that includes some adaptive equipment. And we also have manage and support financially Pro Kids and Pro Fund, which are a program that helps children and youth and adults participate in sport and recreation and cultural activities who otherwise could not afford to do so. We have the intent, Council has given some direction around planning to develop a public art policy and an arts and culture strategy. Council also helps fund the senior safety program, which helps seniors to help live more safely in their home and to be conscious of what they need to be aware of. And we have organizations such as the VON offering a number of health services. For example, one of the health agencies, which is the Nova Scotia Health, has just launched a series of community conversations called Thinking Beyond Band-Aids, in which many of the issues being raised are housing, food, diversity and inclusion, income, violence prevention and safety, accessibility, mental health, and addiction, and social isolation. These are all topics that are being raised at this conversation. And again, when you look at those frameworks, all indicators of quality of life. So time use, feeling in control of our time has been identified as one of those domains. And again, the municipality, along with a number of community groups, offer a wide range of programs, events, and activities for people to choose from. We do appreciate that at times these may not fit within their calendars, but we do certainly try to offer an array of opportunities. We also offer an extensive park and trail system, and for the most part, people can enjoy these facilities on their own time schedule. It is recognized economic and employment trends require people to work. Some may have to work 2 jobs due to economic circumstances limiting their free time to do things. Individuals also choose activities. They don't look towards an institution or an agency. They create their own activities, such as reading a good book, or in my son's case, playing a video game. The municipality has a Recreation, Parks, and Tourism Department whose primary mandate is leisure and culture, which is the 5th domain. A quarterly program brochure is issued every year, each season, and offers a variety of program options. Many programs are free or are offered at low cost. Examples of programs include our seniors' corn boil and mussel bake, family fun days on special occasions such as the Easter egg hunt, and the winter socials that we offer, particularly for our seniors. Again, many community organizations offer programs, events, and activities as well, such as the LCLC or HB Studios. The municipality is blessed to have many natural and built outdoor spaces and is known for its many beaches and agricultural areas, which ties in with the 6th domain, which is our environment. As previously stated, within the municipality, there is an extensive park and trail system, some that provide water views or water access, mountain bike trails, places to picnic, enabling people to connect with nature. And particularly since COVID, I think the connection with people with nature has become so much more significant. And as we're talking about the conservation strategy, conservation has also been a major focus of this particular council and municipality. Partnerships have been established with organizations such as the Mahone Bay Island Conservation Organization and Kingsburg Coastal Conservancy to protect and conserve islands and wetlands. The municipality also recently approved a land conservation policy and working towards a land conservation strategy. In 2019, the municipality declared a climate emergency and developed the local climate change action plan. Some actions undertaken include hosting an annual tree giveaway, assisting in education on the impacts of climate change, and conducting youth engagement on climate change. The municipality also offers the Clean Energy Financing Program, and the Planning Department is working on completing the Provincial Floodline Data Collection Project. In 2024, Council passed second reading to amend its municipal planning strategy and introduced a new municipal-wide land use plan bylaw that includes coastal regulations to protect the coastline and coastal development from the effects of climate change. There's also been concerns for the hemlock willow adelgid, I probably pronounced that wrong, bug, and they have been rising across the province, and this includes in Lunenburg County. So last year and this year, Council has invested funds to identify if this bug exists in any of our parks and looking at ways to implement strategies to hopefully save the trees. Natural disasters, as we know, can hit, and they have. And the municipality is a partner in the Regional Emergency Measure Organization, who assesses emergencies with the aim of prevention and mitigation first, then being prepared and responding when needed and aiding in recovery. The municipality also partners in waste management, working to diverse waste from landfill and recycle and compost correctly. And to mitigate the risk of wildfires, we definitely experience these here in Nova Scotia, Council has approved covering the disposal costs of brush removal from residential properties. Another action that Council took around the environment is they worked with 357 property owners, which removed discharge flowing into the LaHave River. Wastewater treatment is a service the municipality does provide to some residents through wastewater treatment facilities, and they are currently upgrading the Cookville Treatment Center to accommodate the growth in the Cookville area. We are also working on launching, and I understand there's a soft launch coming soon, of our e-bike loan program in partnership with the South Shore Public Library and the Lunenburg County Lifestyle Center. So this will essentially see somebody be able to borrow an e-bike like you would a book, if all goes well. And in partnership with the Municipal Joint Services Board, we also help fund a litter cleanup grant program to support community groups to keep the municipality litter-free. So the seventh domain is listed as democratic engagement, and Council does provide a number of ways for citizens to get involved and stay informed, such as your public input time at committee and council meetings. Folks can come in and speak about something on the agenda or bring a concern forth at that 15 minutes of public input. People also have the opportunity to book presentations in advance so that they can present at committee and council meetings. Council now live streams their meetings so people can watch it live, and if that time is not convenient for them, they can look on our website later and watch the council meeting to stay more informed. And just recently, Council made the decision that one of the two council meetings held monthly, one of those would be a nighttime meeting to try to capture those that probably have shift work to get that balance of day and night meetings. Community engagement, communication and engagement has also been identified as a strategic priority and falls well with this democratic engagement domain. So opportunities for community engagement have been provided and they're being increased. A recent example of this is when residents expressed concerns with the municipal-wide planning strategy. A number of community engagement sessions were offered, which saw 850 people attending in total. The municipality also recently conducted a communication and public engagement survey to better understand how residents prefer to receive their information. And participate in municipal initiatives. So the focus that Council made the decision on is improving municipal matters, and investing more in print, direct mail pieces, more radio and digital advertising, and offering a municipal app. The last domain, but not least, is community vitality, which is about a person's sense of belonging in their community. The Recreation and Parks services do provide opportunities for people to stay connected with family and friends or to make new friends. And to help ensure everyone feels part of their communities, the municipality has partnered in hiring an anti-racism and diversity coordinator to work in and with communities to help make them more welcoming and inclusive. Volunteers are vital to quality of life and play a significant role in community vitality. And I'm going to go off script. I remember doing a session and I had people close their eyes. This was a volunteer session. I was one of the guest speakers. I just asked them to think about all the volunteer opportunities that's provided and start taking those away. So take away your soccer field, take away your community center, take away everything that's volunteer related. You probably had a very bleak picture when you started taking those things away. So I really always think about that example to demonstrate just how important volunteers and organizations are. They play a significant role in community vitality and quality of life. So that's my little aside. To support this valuable resource, the municipality does invest in volunteers and volunteer organizations in a number of ways, such as the extensive funding programs through grants that we have, supporting the various community groups, the fire departments. We have comfort center grants, and we have the litter cleanup grant. We assist groups primarily through the rec department. We really play a community development role. If they're looking for other funding opportunities, we try to help them navigate them through that grant system. If they want to register through Registry of Joint Stocks, we sit down and we help them go through that process. If they want to develop a strategic plan for their organization, essentially we're there as their sounding board and trying to help them in any way that we can. So not just funding, but we provide that, I guess, human resource as well. And of course, Council very much values our volunteer fire service. And a few years ago made the decision to hire a fire service coordinator who certainly supports those fire departments, assisting them in training, recruitment, and any other support that they need. So after COVID-19, Project Volunteer, which is a Lunenburg Queens initiative, was launched. And that was mainly to put the buzz back into volunteering, which is Sandra's logo that she came up with. I'm not going to take credit for that. What we were seeing and what we were reading is that after COVID, a lot of the volunteers that used to volunteer didn't come back. And even though we were seeing a trend of volunteers declining, it became really evident after COVID-19. So this was one of the ways that the municipality in the Lunenburg, I guess all the municipalities in Lunenburg Queens, is trying to get the buzz back into volunteering. So to start that project, a survey was sent to groups in which feedback was received, outlining challenges and any training that they needed. So from that, Project Volunteer does spotlight 3 volunteer organizations in our quarterly program brochure and municipal matters. So this is to help inform people of these community groups, but also to maybe be used as a bit of a recruitment tool if people are looking for opportunities. We have developed an email list from that survey, and Sandra definitely does a great job in keeping people informed of what is happening, either from training, what grants are available, anything that might be of interest to them. And one of the things that came through the survey was that they were looking for additional training and support. So this fall we are looking at hosting a volunteer summit, which will really be a day of learning, sharing, and connecting for volunteer organizations. The municipality is also committed to inclusion, diversity, equity, and accessibility, and to respectful engagement and human dignity. A recent example is the celebration of and raising of the Pride flag. So as stated throughout, community groups and volunteers play a vital role in contributing to quality of life. So I'm just going to share very quickly 4 examples that I included in my report, and again to reiterate that these were very conscious efforts around social connections and social inclusion. So the first is the New Germany Community Cafe. And basically this started out with a question from the minister, like how could the Anglican Hall be used to attract more people? And I spoke directly with the individual. So this was firsthand conversation. So some of their members said, well, how about just having some people to the hall for coffee and muffins? So this is how the New Germany Community Cafe was born. The first morning, they had 4 people show up, but through word of mouth, and I'm sure their welcoming environment that they created, that since grown to 60 to 80 people attending every Thursday. This cafe brings people together over food, conversation, and social interaction, and other partnerships have grown from this initiative. The 644 Revitalization Network uses the hall to make meals monthly and stores them in a freezer for those that need them. And if you want more information, it's more detailed in my report. And then Food Vibes in Riverport, their vision is vibrant communities where intergenerational relationships thrive. And they believe there is a deep pool of gifts, skills, interest, and goodwill waiting to be released in every community. So Food Vibes does help community groups launch their projects, so they're there as a support. And some of those projects included a pie making bee. They helped recruit 32 volunteers for community initiatives, and they transformed an upstairs room in the Riverport Community Center for multi-use activities. And I know they're continuing to work with community groups on their projects. The Front Street Oven is based from Wolfville, and this essentially resulted in citizens approaching Wolfville Council to have an oven in one of their parks. I'm thinking about how we can do this here. This was supported, and now this group sees about 150 people weekly from May to October who gets very excited to go and make their own pizza. They provide the dough, you bring the pizza toppings, and this is really just an opportunity to share food with friends, family, or make new acquaintances. Mahone Bay United, this is the last example, and this began 7 years ago, as some parents just wanted to provide an opportunity for kids to play soccer, and not necessarily in that traditional system of soccer or any sport. Their model is based on no obligation to pay to play. And they started with 15 kids, and now they're up to about 350 members, and they are supported substantially by volunteers in the business community. So I suspect the business community plays a good role in the no obligation to pay to play. They conducted a survey 3 years into the program, and the top results that they got from their participants were a sense of belonging with the club. The confidence level of the youth grew, and not just in soccer, in everything. And of course, not surprising, their skills in soccer grew. But I think that's very telling that the first thing that they said is they had a sense of belonging. So the founder of this program has expressed many times, and if you go on their website, watch their videos, that soccer is really just a vehicle. They are a community organization through which they build community and develop young people. So those are the 4 great examples. 3 are from Lunenburg County, and I'm sure that there's many more, and all of you have your own experiences that you could share, but this was just to highlight some of the good work that's currently happening. So we've labeled this next slide analysis observations. Working in the field of municipal government, recreation, and community development, a few observations has been made along the way. And again, I reiterate, we didn't go and do any research. I don't want to know how many years between Alex, myself, and Sandra and Kelly bring, but a few years, 30 plus. And these are some of our observations. So organizations do tend to work in silos, and that's not just government, that's nonprofits. And sometimes we can see maybe not its efficient use of resources, so some duplication. In some cases, there may need to be duplications because the service is needed, but that's definitely just an observation. Another is the further away you get from the urban core, communities are more self-sufficient. So less reliant on government, less reliant on funding. That's been my experience. The further away you go, and I'll probably get in trouble using a particular community, but I see that in a community like New Germany. The further away from the core, they're very self-sufficient. Community groups do need funding. I mean, if you ask any nonprofit group, the first thing they're going to list is funding, but they often require that navigation support, and that working through any government system can be complicated. Pilot programs, grants are not sustainable. Quite often, funding partners will do pilot programs, which is great, starts the program, people become excited about it, expect the service, and then unfortunately, quite often, groups have to find other ways to sustain it, or it has to go by the wayside. Community groups are an investment in our communities and neighborhoods. For every dollar invested, I don't know how much the return is, but it's significant. So that's why every time I come and ask council for funding, I really feel that we are investing big time in our community groups. Is a big investment in our quality of life. And that we all have a role to play in quality of life. It's not just government, it's just not community groups, it's individuals, it's all of us. And community organizations and volunteers are vital. Again, I keep saying that to the community life. And we have seen definitely an increase in newcomers in our community, and we need to be more welcoming and inclusive, learn how to be. And I think one of the things we have to tap into the talents and the knowledge that we have, and we really can share from one another and learn and create a much more inclusive and welcoming communities. Again, particularly since COVID-19, I've always believed this, being in this field, but parks and open spaces are definitely valued. People want to connect with nature and want those opportunities, and these are public spaces that people can do those in. Recreation plays a significant role in bringing people together. We certainly get lots of positive feedback on a lot of the programs and events that we offer. It does give a way for people to connect. We need to know our movers and our shakers. I'm a firm believer of that because these are the people that get things done. So if you stay connected with the movers and shakers, you can do some great things in communities. Nonprofits I've seen this, spend a great deal of time securing funding. When they could, if there was more sustainable funding, they could spend their time on the things that they want to spend their time on and perhaps should spend their time on, which sees the benefits to the community. Definitely in my 30-plus years, I have seen more downloading to municipalities, and the downloading doesn't just stop at municipalities. It continues on and goes to community groups and volunteers. They've often picked up services that levels of government don't provide. That communities are resilient, especially during emergency or any challenge. I think COVID-19 was a good example of that, how people, when we saw something, such a international, like it was this epidemic, you saw communities come together to support one another. And you see that during the floods, during the fire, they definitely do. And I wanted to specifically, in my analysis, what I've observed is community and fire halls play a significant role, and I want to name out the facilities specifically because they are often the hubs in the community. These are the physical gathering spaces quite often. And for me, one of the things a true believer of, again, is relationship building and communication are key. You need to build relationships in communities, you need to communicate with them, and this is how you can that's how you get to know the movers and shakers. This is how you can get things done in communities. So from that non-research-based analysis, some assumptions and conclusions that we drew from that is that the municipality does have a number of assets that contribute to quality of life. So just all the things that I outlined that the municipality does along with the community groups. That community groups, community facilities, and volunteers are vital to quality of life and to that community fabric. We need to have more flexible and sustainable funding. I actually do think that ours is fairly flexible, but I'm talking generally, like from provincial government, federal government, to other agencies that provide funding. We don't have a lot of specific data around quality of life. Probably Engage Nova Scotia is the one that holds that data. Just the need for more specific data to make informed decisions moving forward on quality of life. And that volunteers, yes, they do, and groups do need money, but they also require that navigation service. It can become quite complicated. And again, I just end it with relationship building and communication are key to building strong communities. So now we're getting into the options for council to consider, part of the report. So based on all of that, one of the options that we came up with that council could consider, and these are just not suggesting that you do them, it's just for consideration to get you thinking. There could be other options that we didn't even think of that you think, oh, that should be added to the list. That's what part of today's conversation is about. So undertaking a community asset mapping, which doesn't just, this is really a process that involves collecting information about people, organizations, physical spaces, and cultural elements that can be leveraged for community benefit. So it's that whole, it's not, when people think about mapping, they just think often about the physical, so it's that whole broad base of what, and it comes from what we have to offer as opposed to some of the gaps, although you do need to identify that they should help you identify the gaps. The other option is council could consider inviting Engage Nova Scotia to present the 2019 survey results and invite them back in 2020, well, when their findings are available for fall of 2025. This would give you the pre-COVID and would also give you the post, but if they came in and presented the 2019, at least you would have that data. It's like they posed 230 questions. It's pretty complicated. I did go and looked, and I think that it's better if they came and presented their data because they can interpret it. And then they're also looking again at launching a survey in 2025. And so another option is that council could really look at helping through our communications, really promoting that survey to try to increase the number of people taking that survey than in 2019. I think it was 780 some people that participated the last time, so it would be really good. And our region is described as Lunenburg Queens in that survey. Establish a quality of life group network, and this could build sustainability and a model for agencies working together and utilizing resources more effectively. I will be talking a little bit later in my presentation about grant funding and training opportunities, and if council moves forward with that, those community organizations taking the training could help form the basis of this quality of life working group. And we could consider offer navigation services to groups and individuals. So although I feel in the rec department, we do provide navigation services, but it's specifically to recreation. And of course, quality of life is a much broader scope than recreation. To continue to invest in Project Volunteer. There was money invested for us to do the Volunteer Summit and to do some of those things, and this is in partnership with all municipal units in Lunenburg Queens, so we could continue to look at that to continue to provide further support. We could review our own grant policy to see where we could be more flexible. I think that it is a pretty good grant program, but there are areas where we could be maybe a little bit more flexible in our funding. And council could also consider increasing annual operating grant funding. As I had stated before, one of the observations was often it's very event specific or capital specific. There's very few organizations that provide annual operating grant, which really helps keep the lights on for those that have halls or allows people to do their day-to-day stuff. Hopefully providing them more time to spend on what needs to be done in the community. So then I created a separate slide, and this is for options for council to consider concerning grant funding. So if council recalls, we had received funding from both federal and provincial government, and we were looking at partnering with the Happy Communities model. And for various reasons, council made the decision, based on staff's recommendation, not to proceed with that Happy Communities model. But we have received funding from both federal and provincial funding, so we need to make a decision of whether we're going to move forward with some type of project that meets that need, or make the decision not to proceed. The deliverables that the funding partners are expecting, they're expecting for staff and other community members to be trained in methods that connect community members and communities, specifically with a focus on senior connections, because these were senior funded grants specifically. Second outcome is to train, support, and coach any senior connectors that become part of that training. To host a kickoff event for these connectors or people taking the training. To host events utilizing the skills and the knowledge of these 16 to 20 people that would be taking the training, to go and offer events within the community, within the municipality, to bring people together and to create spaces where people feel they belong. And then the fifth outcome was to provide an app to help connect the community. So those were the deliverables. So as outlined in the information that you received in your package, and I know it was a big report, the Designing for Belonging course seems to fit the really fit the deliverables in these, that the funders are looking for. The Designing for Belonging does offer an 8-week virtual course, which they can take up to 20 people. This course helps participants engage in community-driven and co-designed approaches, ensuring that individuals with lived experience has a voice in shaping solutions to the barriers they face. And I'm quoting this, by creating spaces for shared decision-making, this training empowers participants to build more inclusive, welcoming environments that drive meaningful change. So one of the outcomes of the Designing for Belonging course and coaching is to work with participants in developing an evaluation tool that will help measure the success of these events. So if council moves forward with this, the intention would be for 5 to 6 staff to take this course, and we'd be inviting organizations to participate as well. So that when I was talking about that network or group, they may be able to form as that network and group. And if you can remember, one of our observations was that we tend to work in silos. So this would be a way of trying to share the information, share the resources, share the training, and work together, perhaps more effectively, utilizing each other's resources and serving the community in a better way. So that could be one of those outcomes. So the total cost for the training, support, and coaching is $39,100 HST inclusive, and we do have a budget of $43,000. So I should back up. So one piece of it is the training, but the other is they would come and bring us all together in a face-to-face, providing further mentorship after the training course has been taken place. So the training would take place from September to November. Then we would get together as a group and basically reconnect, found out what works, re-engage with that 16 to 20 people. Any funds that would remain would be help to support the kickoff events and events hosted by staff. The municipality is already investing in an app which we could use as part of that grant application, in which we could use to connect residents and provide them information, because that was the purpose of the app. So the Designing for Belonging does meet all the deliverables and expected timeframes for the federal and provincial funding. The municipality's procurement policy under alternative procurement would enable the municipality to engage the services for Designing for Belonging from a public institution, which is the University of New Brunswick. So I'm just going to focus now on the options for this funding. It's a little bit choppy. So the alternatives for the grant funding that we have presented for council to consider is you could decide not to go with the Designing for Belonging. You could direct staff to issue an RFP seeking some other agency or public institution to provide the training and mentoring services as outlined in that in the 2 grants. The caution with that is the grant funding needs to be expended by March of 2026, or council could make the decision we don't want to move forward with this at all and return the money until you have a better scope of where you're going with quality of life. So the alternatives for the other options, and I can go back to those, as I figured, your memory's good, but probably not that good. I'll go back to those slides, and we would need to have specific direction on those options of whether you wanted to pursue them or not, or whether you needed more information be brought back before you could make a decision. But before I do that, I would just like to go to the next slide. The next slide, is we do have a recommended motion specific to the federal and provincial funding, and that is recommending that council authorize staff to implement the Designing for Belonging training and the subsequent Community of Practice Network workshop, using $8,000 from the Recreation Department budget and $35,000 in federal and provincial grants for a maximum budget of $43,000. And then I want to come back to the questions. So I know that As I presented this at the senior management team, I told them to buckle up, so I should have probably told you guys to do that at the beginning, because I know that was a lot of information. The intent of the report was really just to see what was happening internationally and what we are currently doing, so that we can so we can celebrate what we're doing, but also help identify perhaps some of the gaps in what direction we want to take when it comes to the quality of life priority. All right, I'll open the floor to questions, and I'll go back to those slides that have the other options.
Questions, comments for Trudy?
Information.
Councillor Oikel.
Thank you. Wow.
It's a lot of information.
Yeah, a lot of information. And I know when we were doing this as a strategic priority, Councillor Burns and I really talked about how loneliness and mental health and physical health, right? I have a couple things, but I'll just start with one, and that is your designing for belonging.
Mm-hmm.
Since it was the last thing, it's the first thing on my mind.
Sure.
I think it's a great idea. My only comment and possible problem is that many of the community groups that do work with seniors and offer them programs tend to be competitive with one another and feel that they're constantly competing for funding and for the numbers of people to get into their programs. Right, I'm thinking of two particular ones that I don't want to mention them.
Yep.
But I do know that they both don't work well together. And so that would be my only concern, because those would be, these two groups are probably the part of those groups that you would want to be into this.
So the designing for belonging
Right.
would be specifically like for staff or volunteers that contribute a lot to, so it would be training in the designing for belonging, so that you could create more welcoming in inclusive spaces. So that is specifically for people to take the training, so that hopefully that then they would have the knowledge and the skill set and the training to then go out and implement what they've learned. And it makes for a much more, so you're listening to First Voice. How can, when I went and saw this professor, and it was actually at the anti-racism conference for recreation, this professor was presenting this designing for belonging, and as she was talking about it, I was like, oh, this really would fit what we're trying to do here. And they talked about a recreation facility in another location that we won't name, but the Muslim community was not feeling welcomed in that recreation facility. So through this research project, they made connections with people on the ground, First Voice. And so they met with the recreation facility. They talked about ways of how they could be more welcoming. And I get a little excited sometimes about this stuff. This is what the hope would be to come from this designing for belonging. We offer recreation programs. Let's think about how we can be more thoughtful, and how can we train more than just staff at the municipality, so this is a much more sustainable model. Hence why the option of considering perhaps, and if it does, nothing ventured, nothing gained. If that network group doesn't work, then, we try the next thing. But this could be an opportunity, if council approved the designing for belonging, we get that cohort group of 16 to 20 people that's not just municipal staff, but other folks that's working in nonprofit communities, that to really start having the conversations about, oh, I do this really well, or oh, I have this resort. How can we work together? And I'm in this business for 30 years. I still haven't figured it out. I'm sure I'd get rich if I figured it out. But that is a key of working together, and how do we do that? And we need to be more inclusive and welcoming. Our communities are changing. And so the way that we work needs to change. And how can we do this? There's an opportunity, I see it as an opportunity with this grant funding, to see how we can move forward with this designing for belonging. So I guess my response to that is hopefully after this, those two groups would be working better together because they would then have some of the knowledge and the skill set to share resources and create those welcoming environments. I don't know if that answers your question, but.
No, it was just to
my
mention
attention.
that, bring it to your attention, yeah, because I'm sure that besides staff, the other people would be members from those groups,
Yes, we would be
right?
looking at
Right?
seeking, like from the
People.
YMCA, yeah,
Exactly,
different
exactly,
organizations, yeah.
And I do have other things, but I'll wait.
Counselor Smith.
Yeah, just sticking with that, the question around the grant. Personally, I found the program, it sounded very academic, which I have concerns about in terms of developing a community practice around this kind of language that doesn't seem like, honestly, very grassroots in Lunenburg County. And the other question I had was around, and don't get me wrong, I've come from a very, like, I consider myself kind of academic myself, and I have to pull myself back from that sometimes. So I can see the excitement around it, but I'm just concerned about around the community of practice, excluding some people and some of our more talented organizers who don't see themselves reflected in that kind of course. And the second question, or the second comment I had was just around coordination with the Anti-Racism Committee. Is this the kind of thing that we should be, like there's some very talented people with a lot of experience working in our communities on anti-racism and discrimination. And this seems like something that would be good to put past that committee and ask for advice, and certainly the coordinator, Jen Roberts, I think would have, some very interesting input. And I just wonder if, as staff, that if you consulted with her, or where does that committee fit in as far as you're thinking?
Yeah, I did have a conversation with Ellen and Jim just off the cuff, and they were fairly excited about doing something of connection. So I absolutely agree that they would need to be involved. And I do get your point about the academic, and I would typically think that way, and perhaps it would be true if we move forward. But when I listened to her presentation, I had the opportunity to listen to her presentation, and when they were doing the research, they was really on the ground. When we were talking about boots on the ground this morning, they were boots on the ground. They were interacting. And this is really from that research how this course came about. And that's why I'm giving the alternative. Council could say, no, we're not ready to move forward with the project. So we just go back and say to the funders, no, we're not ready. We just don't want to spend the money for the sake of spending money. That's why I listed out the deliverables. So training was because we were looking at the Happy Communities model at the time, and that was a big piece of theirs. And so in order to move forward, we have to find a replacement for the Happy Communities, for lack of a better word, that would meet those deliverables. So when I was looking at that, I was like, that could definitely meet the deliverables and meet the time frame. And if nothing else, hopefully we would bring 20 people together having a conversation after this. And the fact that it was virtual, it would be accessible. So I was just looking at all those parameters. Something would be like, essentially I needed to find something that was ready-made. I'm just being honest.
So just to follow up on that, I would think I would support us exploring the idea of an RFP or RFQ for the same deliverables to see if anything came out of the local community, and to also have this as an option. Is there a deadline for when people would need to apply?
Again, yeah, that would be my caution. I mean, it is an option, but council would need to recognize we need to spend the money by March. And so you're probably looking at an RFP now in September, awarding it in October. So your time frame is very hard to meet those deliverables.
Mayor McLean Weil.
I have a lot of thoughts on this because I think it opens up a very large, a very large issue in our community, and I'm speaking on the first part, and the discussion around the program and the grant. I personally, I never like, and I'm not supportive of programming to fit the
grant.
To fit the grant. I abhor it, would be an understatement. So I would rather see us, and I know people around the table are going to say, you're going to send the money back. I think we send the money back. Because I think we're looking for something that we're not really ready to make a decision on. And I think and the reason I say that is that Trudy's earlier report opens up a very large conversation that I think we need to have, and I don't think we should conclude it today. I think we need to really dig into this. And I think and I'm going to ask this as a question, is there capacity in the work plan, your work plan, to actually refine this in some way? And I ask that because I think there are elements of, and I want to focus on your first part and just set the whole option for us to consider on the $45,000 expenditure. I'm going to set that aside because my opinion is we should not spend that. Send the money back. Let's focus on what quality of life what we really want to achieve here. Think it through carefully and then decide how we're going to allocate funds either internally or seek outside funding for things we may want to do. Maybe I'll just leave it at that and see what other conversations come up. But I think to my question about capacity to refine this in some way in terms of us not making clear decisions today, but giving some direction, if you could respond to that, I think that might be helpful.
Well, I think that if you don't move forward with the grant, because that would take substantial time of staff doing the training and doing the events, then we would have more capacity to refine this in some way. And I do know that it is a priority of council and we take direction from you. So, it would free up some capacity.
Any further questions or comments? Okay. Councillor Hubley.
I'm not sure where I sit. I really love the idea of the designing for belonging. I think that we could take that education and move into the community and create great community, groups, I guess, that we could take the people from the communities and teach them what they need to know. I know that there are a lot of people out there that are not involved in anything, that feel isolated. I'm confused.
Well, I guess my response, and this is why we have these discussions, is that if you do make the decision not to proceed today, I don't think the Designing for Belonging course is going away. And so, if you wanted to take, this is a lot of information and it's a very complex issue. When I was reviewing it and looking at all the articles, it is very complex. So if you didn't want to make a decision on that, it doesn't mean to say we couldn't revisit that at a different time, unless they decide next year not to offer it for some reason. But that I do tend to agree. We need to get people more involved. We need to connect. And again, but to the mayor's point, I was looking at what kind of model could I slip in, because we have already received this funding and we based our application on using the Happy Communities model. And so certain deliverables were to be delivered. I can't go and change the deliverables. So how could we find something that would meet that deliverable? I don't know if I'm answering your question or not, Councillor Hubley, but I think that if you're not sure, we can always do it at a later date if it gets determined that that's the direction we want to take.
Follow up? Just a comment. My fear is that we'll lose this, that this will be lost somewhere. We'll get busy doing other things, and we're going to forget about getting out there and getting these people involved. And that's my hesitation here. I don't want to lose this.
Our Deputy CEO has a comment.
You've identified quality of life as a strategic priority. It will not be lost. It's something that we, as staff, have an obligation to track and report for you. So we were looking for two pieces today. We want some general comments around direction so that we can further refine the broader topic, and then we want some direction about what to do with this grant funding. If you say no to the proposed use of the grant funding, the rest of the information still has to come back. We're then looking for your commentary on which elements seem to be effective at addressing where your concerns are, where do you see interest, where do you see alignment with our strengths and what we can do, and where are we best addressing community issues, and then we will come back with more concrete options for you on that front.
Mayor McLean-Weil.
I'm going to extend my comments now because it may help in people's thinking about this. I think Trudy has outlined a really important point here about rethinking our role in communities. And, you know, we've done for a long time, we've had a kind of a mandate of how we deliver in communities in addressing programming needs and so forth. But I think what she has uncovered today, and in our conversation and concerns about addressing quality of life, I think it gives us an opportunity to really rethink how we do this in community. Is our role as a municipal council to deliver the programming always, or is our role now, because we see the need to rebuild capacity in volunteer sector, do we have a role to help build that sector, which I think goes to your point about not losing sight of the training opportunities. But it really then speaks to the role we might have as supporting those community groups in a way that we're not necessarily delivering the program always, that we're supporting community volunteers. How do we support development of volunteers and them recognizing the need in their community to deliver programs, create activities? And that points to, I think, the point that Trudy has made in her report around the navigator. I don't like that word, but I know it's, people can identify with it. But that we have a role to play in what I just think more of as community development, which is broader than just recreation activities. It does deal with, it may deal with issues around housing or other needs in the community. And it touches on recreation and our role there, but it is a broader role. And I think with the need for looking at volunteer sector and the things that we're starting to see around the need for housing and other elements of our community, whether it be to support initiative, for example, in New Germany with a new school that's coming, should we not be thinking about how we help the community develop the resources within the community to advocate for what that community needs in the school? I mean, I'm broadening our thinking about this, but I don't have specifics, but I feel like I would like to see staff come back with some outline of how the current resources, because I'm not advocating for new hires, let me be clear. I'm advocating for a re-examination and a reallocation of the current resources that could accommodate this. I don't know if I'm being clear, but I think there is a role for us in helping to support communities, develop their decisions about what they see happening in their community, whether it be in recreation, whether it be in education, whether it be in housing or other elements. And that is building on that volunteer base, because let's be honest, communities stand up when they want things done, and people step forward when they have things that they want to do. And maybe our role needs to be more in helping to encourage that, recognizing we in the future aren't going to be able to do all this as a municipality. And to Trudy's point, volunteers are playing an incredible role in delivering activity, whether it be recreation. You think of all the volunteers that keep our trails open and maintain our trails. We could never do that if we didn't have that volunteer sector. So I guess I'm wanting staff to come back with some idea around how we might frame that out in our current structure.
Complex.
Is there any other first-time speakers that wish to make a comment or question? Okay. Then we have Councillor Smith and Oikel.
I feel like the presentation has been a little bit overwhelming because quality of life takes in so much, and then we've got an overview of quality of life and a number of questions about how we want to move forward on that. And then we've got this separate question of this grant money. And in my mind, those two should be separate. But you can clarify for me if you want, like, that if we pursued the grant, that it would limit our capacity to deal with the other quality of life options that you've presented. But for me, I really, knowing how much community groups are in need of training, in need of collaboration, in need of, learning from each other, networking, it really just does not sit well with me that we don't pursue this funding. And I think that while I don't think that this program is right, I would just like to seriously consider what the viability of putting an RFP out to the community and what comes back if we could get that done by the spring as required. And I'm also wondering if, for me, I think of something like, we're obviously trying to address inclusion and equity in some of our community groups and services that we provide. Could the project be a little bit more focused, like workshops on how to hold a newcomer event in your community, like something super practical and focused, where you could have coaching and something kind of more out of the box, resources that people could put to use right away, and best practices, that kind of thing. I just really hate the idea of leaving that money, letting that money go, because I just think that it's hard. These organizations work so hard to find funding that for us to just say, well, we're just going to send this back, it just doesn't sit right with me.
My caution with doing the RFP is that we would not be able to make the timeline. And I know it probably seemed a little bit muddled bringing the two together, but this was the the timing that was created, and it does lend itself, the project, to quality of life. But yeah, they could be considered. That's why I had two different slides. This is, consider the grant funding. It certainly fits within the quality of life. I'm not talking really that straight, but I think that we either have to make a decision on the designing for belonging, if you want my honest opinion, or forgoing the grant. And what you're describing to me, this is what I thought about, is that you're now starting to create maybe a different model than what the designing for belonging provides. And if we want to do that model, then let's sit down and think about it and then apply for funding again to see if we can do that. That's where as I'm hearing the conversation. And when council has a better understanding of where they want to go with this quality of life priority. If we don't want the money to go away, I still see that there's value in the designing for belonging. If council wants to pursue that, it does meet the deliverables. But we will be spending staff time as well, because if this gets approved, then we now have to look at inviting organizations to participate. So that will take us, because the course starts in September. It also means 5 to 6 staff people taking this to, so there are staff resources that are going into this, but hopefully we come out with the training and the knowledge that we can now do things a little bit differently, that we're creating, although as much as we like to think we're welcoming and inclusive, but sometimes we're not. So how can we learn these, skill sets to do things a little bit different and meet the needs of communities today? So this is really council's decision. I've brought forth, and maybe it was unfair of me to put the RFP, but it is an option. If council says to go ahead, I just want to raise the red flags around moving forward with that, because I don't know if we would be able to deliver it. And if we did that, I could say I can confidently say I would not have time to come back with that report with an outline of re-examining how we can use our resources differently and how we could accommodate this priority.
Councillor Oikel.
So I just want to go back to your question of what other actions would council like to see regarding social connections, social inclusiveness, and to build stronger communities. And although I certainly do agree that with both Councillor Smith and the mayor, like what role should we play, right? And that volunteers do need support and help and training on different things. There are presently groups out there that need help now and need support now. And some of them we could certainly do something with perhaps as well. One of the examples are community halls and community events. There are some communities that got rid of their community halls and wish that they hadn't now, right? And wish that they had some place to have events in their communities. As well as I'm thinking of the Multicultural Society, who does most of its stuff within the towns rather than doing it within the municipality. And that maybe we should be looking at cooperating with them in order to bring, for our communities to feel that our newcomers from other cultures feel welcomed, and that people learn about them and know about them by having meals together. Meals are a big thing. We love to eat, and it's a great way to socialize. I don't know what we can do. I know that with the seniors, all of our activities have to do with food, and everybody just loves it. And but anyway, that's just my thoughts, regarding that. I also want to put a plug in for outdoor exercise equipment in our parks. In River Ridge Commons and in Miller Peace Park to help with mental health, physical health, maybe get more people out into our parks. I've mentioned these outdoor equipment over the years, and I would really like it to be considered for our new budget coming up in our new year, to be put in there and discussed and for other council members to learn about. Thank you.
Councillor Hubley.
I want to see us go ahead with the education. I think that in Abby's presentation, we voted for the information and the education so we could make better decisions. This will help us in making decisions in the direction we want to go. it will help community members also make decisions. I don't think it's ever a waste of resources when we are educating ourselves in the community. Just going to put that out there.
Councillor Reinhardt.
Thanks for the presentation. Yeah, it does seem like this is a very large issue, and I'm not sure that the designing for belonging, I'm sure that it has a lot of value, but I'm not sure if it's the right value at this time, considering we have such a big quality of life issue to discuss. So I'm wondering if it would be possible to offer it to community members, but not have so much staff involved in taking the course, where that would take maybe time away from discussing the bigger issues, if there would be value to that.
I'd have to think about that. I mean, there could be less staff. I'm just giving you off the cuff again. I think that there would have to be at least 1 or 2 staff involved, because I'm not sure there would need to be some leadership and the purpose, and, you know, I think there would have to still be some staff involvement if we were to proceed. And I guess I was thinking 5 or 6 staff, again, just being honest, is that I was looking at the sustainability. Some of us aren't going to be here forever, and so like if we get staff trained, and then they can also train other people in the community, which is part of the intent. You'd have that sustainability and that leadership coming from the municipality. That was the reason, and I guess also educating us and how we can do things differently in community as well. So if we're asking community to do things differently, we also need to have the training and experience as well.
Is there any other speakers? So we've had some good discussion on this. Things coming up with going ahead, reallocation, redirection, resources that we have in place, the staff time, not pursuing the funding, pursuing the funding. So to get a consensus on this, I'm going to suggest that we put the motion on the floor.
I can go back to it.
If it is defeated, the direction for Trudy would be the funding would essentially go back because there's nothing else in place. So I'm getting some nods around the table, so is there somebody willing to bring that forward? Councillor Hubley.
Thank you. To Deputy Mayor Vino and members of council, I move the municipal council authorize staff to implement the Designing for Belonging training and the subsequent Community of Practice Network workshop using $8,000 from the Recreation Department budget and $35,000 in federal and provincial grants for a maximum budget of $43,000, and I so move.
Is there a seconder on that motion? Seconded by Councillor Oikel. Discussion on the motion. Seeing none, my apologies, Councillor Smith.
So how would people, how would you recruit people for the Community of Practice Network workshop? Or that, sorry, to take the training?
To take the training, we'd do some advertising, and I'd probably do specific outreach of organizations that I know are in, like the YMCA comes to mind, right? Where they offer a lot of services. They're in recreation. They have staff. Sometimes I look at that as well, because you have to look at the capacity of an organization as well. So I would probably it'd be a combination.
Just as a follow-up, would you be looking at, community hall associations or other kind of, I'm thinking smaller community-based nonprofits, like YMCA I would almost hope that they would already have this kind of training available to their employees.
I'd be opening it up to anybody. And again, I'd leave that up to the organization, knowing that we have a capacity of 20 participants. And again, if council decided to move ahead and it was successful, it doesn't mean to say we couldn't replicate that again, right? And offer it again and expand the network.
Councillor Reinhardt.
Thanks. Just kind of in the same vein, would there be an attempt to achieve regional representation, like across the district?
Yes, I would definitely look at that.
Councillor Oikel.
Yes, I just, want to remind us that it's $8,000 to train people, to help our organizations to do more. And I don't think that is a lot of money to achieve that, to get that support and that training and to get that education and help for our community organizations. And I also agree with Councillor Smith that it would be great to really reach out to our present community hall groups. Like I'm thinking of the Broad Cove, and I believe there's...
we have hundreds.
Yeah, there's lots, yeah.
And I do just want to reiterate that the 8,000 has already been included in this budget. It's not asking. I just want to really, okay.
Mayor McLean-Weil.
Yeah, I just want to summarize. I won't be supporting this, and I was very clear in the beginning, but it is not that I'm opposed to training. I think that training will be part of what we need to look at in the broader context of asking Trudy to go back and take some time to really flesh out what we might think about as a way forward around developing a different approach towards addressing some of the needs we have in our community. I think training will be a critical piece of that. It's just, I don't think this is the right time or the right program for what we may need. I think we're putting the cart before the horse.
Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. And Councillor Brooks?
I'm in opposition.
Okay, so those opposed, and we'll let the record show also that Councillor Brooks is opposed. And also opposed is Councillor Burns, Mayor McLean-Weil, and Councillor Bell. I'm in favor. Okay. Motion is carried. So you have your direction to proceed with the motion put on the floor.
And there were other options that was outlined for council, looking for direction. I don't know if you want to go through those at this point, or...
Yeah, well, please continue with those.
Okay, so some of the options that we had suggested for council's consideration is to undertake the community asset mapping, to invite Engage Nova Scotia to present on their 2019, and then come back with their 2025 findings and perhaps help promote their survey, establish a quality of life working group with community representation, offer navigation services to groups and individuals, continue to invest in Project Volunteer, review our own grant policy to see where we can be more flexible, and for council to consider perhaps increasing the annual operating funding that we provide to groups. Those were the options. So I can flip back and forth. So maybe we could take one, I don't know how you want to do this, one at a time and just say we're not there yet, we need more information, we're not prepared to make, or we can move forward.
Councillor Bell.
I would be interested in asking Engage Nova Scotia to present their results. I think that would be reflective of our communities. I didn't support the previous action. I just feel we have too much on our plate. We're doing too many projects all at the same time and not necessarily finishing up any in the proper way. I think that also us being offered this funding is entrapment. on several other provincial things. Give us a big check and let the municipalities do the work. I'm not excited by the way that this is being given to the municipalities to provide the outcomes.
Councillor Smith.
Yeah, just on some of the options, I've spoken before, and I think, you know, in my very first meeting with Mayor McLean-Weil, when we were asked what our priorities were, I spoke about support for community halls. And I'm just a strong supporter of protecting, growing, building that infrastructure. And one of the books that I really have drawn on is called Palaces for the People. I don't, if anybody hasn't read that, it's a very cool book. The subtitle is How Social Infrastructure Can Help Fight Inequality, Polarization, and the Decline of Civic Life. And it kind of dovetails with what David Suzuki has been saying lately, too, about community resilience being where we really need to put our focus on climate change adaptation right now. And the point that is made in this book is that resilience, you know, they looked at some studies of severe weather events, and the communities that were most resilient had public spaces. And it's not just because people had comfort stations to go to, it's because they had places to meet, to check in on each other, to meet other people in their community, and just basically to be more connected and less polarized around, the political divides we're seeing these days. So that's a bit of a ramble about that, but anything we can do to support those public spaces is really important to me. And I'm really interested in what Andy Thompson has done in Pictou County around grouping halls together to apply for money as a group to make efficiency upgrades. He did a presentation for Aging Well Nova Scotia a few months ago, and I'd be happy to share that recording with anyone. But I think thinking rather about collaboration rather than competition is where we need to go in community development. I have other thoughts on quality of life, but I do support, what Mayor McLean-Weil has said about taking another look at how we approach this whole project, and maybe refining it a little bit, because it is so huge. And I think that we can be a little more focused in our approach about how we're using our resources and empowering communities, because I really feel strongly a lot of this needs to come from communities, and that they know what they need and where the energy is, and we need to follow that. We don't need to we don't need to teach them per se how to do this. We need to learn how to empower them. But all the assumptions and the observations that you presented earlier, like, we're so lucky to have you and your years of experience in this field, because so many of those things were bang on for me. But anyways, that's a bit of a ramble, but yeah, I just wanted to put a pin in or emphasize physical spaces and support for getting money for those spaces.
And really what the purpose was today was to give you that big overview, and it is a complex issue. And we didn't want to be presumptuous around what that framework should look like. We were looking for that direction.
And just to reiterate that, there's no motions that will come out of this discussion. It is for direction. And I just want to make a comment coming off of Councillor Smith that I feel like you already do a really good job at navigating services to groups and individuals. And it's more so just a continuation of that. That it wouldn't need a separate piece, because anytime I've sent groups or organizations your way, if it's not us or we don't have the answer, we connect them. So we're already kind of providing that for community groups. I am interested in the community asset mapping, but not an overcomplicated project. But it would be nice to know where we have halls, where we have kitchens in halls, where we have places that might be for sports or just for gathering. So it's an easy access. If somebody came and said, I want to do this, what do you have available in the municipality? And it's something that we could have tangible and hand over, but I don't think it needs to be an overcomplicated project, really just a list. And I'm sure you have a lot of that information with the work that Sandra has done on volunteer groups and renting facilities ourselves. So just my comments. Councillor Oigel.
I agree with you on your last comment regarding the community asset management. I also support Councillor Bell in the idea of having that Engage Nova Scotia present their 2019 survey results. However, I also want to add that I think we should promote the 2025 survey because it will give us even more data, and that we can hopefully before 2030 get the information from 2025.
They told me it would be available at least by 2026. Like
Yeah,
it
well, that would
wouldn't
be great, because it would be good to have that comparison on the difference, right? And I'm thinking that the quality of life working group would probably come out of the belonging, could possibly come out of that, because you will have community representation there, and then it might. But I'm not really sure what you were thinking that their purpose would be, other than work, like, I don't know, I have no idea.
It would really just be a working group. If it was the intent with the Designing for Belonging, that could be a starting point. Doesn't mean to say that's the only people that could be involved.
Right.
And it's really just to gather us together to have conversations and to see what projects we could be working on when it comes to the whole quality of life. So I'll give you the example of the Lunenburg Queens Rec Directors meet once a month. And we work on projects that's regional in nature. We share our resources. So this would be really bringing those people that are in that quality of life and in the community business together. And what those terms of reference or what it worked, I would really want that group to help formulate what it would be, because I don't want to go in and dictate that this is what the terms of reference is. This is would, I guess, to Councillor Smith's empowering community of what they would like to see come out of this, and we're there to not only just support but participate. That's just really the thought process. It's like, how can we get folks really connecting? Because we do, and I'm just as guilty as the next person. You get into the day-to-day and the weeds, and you forget about the bigger picture sometimes. I had a CIO that said 70% focus on the day-to-day, 30% should always be for strategic planning, and sometimes we don't do that strategic thinking and that bigger overview, and that's really what that would be, in my mind, would be about. But if we set that up, I would talk to the group and say, what do you see the purpose is?
Right. And could you show us the other list? Because there were two,
Oh, I sure could.
Not?
There you go.
Right. Yeah, and definitely continue on, I feel, to, with the project volunteer. And you can look at, if you feel that there is more flexibility in our policy, but I think that our grant policies are just fabulous, really, really up there, and in the amount of money we put into them and what we're willing, and as a municipality, as a council, as a community, to give to our citizens.
I do tend to agree our grant policy is pretty fabulous. The one area that I looked at when I was quickly looking through it is our program, because the program grant says we'll give if it's a new program or if you're expanding something new. So it's not really supporting a program that's ongoing, which I guess kind of speaks to the pilot project thing. You give money for the pilot, but you don't give money to continue. So I think there is still a little bit of room, but I tend to agree there's our program is probably more flexible and wide than most.
Follow up. So are you able to do all those things that we've been mentioning so far that you've put on here?
Yeah, I could definitely have Engage Nova Scotia come. The whole asset mapping might take a little bit more time. I'd have to look at where it is on the priority, like it couldn't be in 2 months' time. And I would just caution that that's just really the physical spaces. It's not really an extensive community asset mapping to find out who's in your community. The people, the connections, that is really what community asset mapping is about.
That's what I understood as well, it to be just where places are, as opposed to going too in depth with it. I will speak to the increased annual operating grant funding. Since I've been on board, I don't think there's been a year that has gone down, especially now, down as in applications. And especially now that you've done such a good job by having that workshop, open house meeting where groups can come in and ask questions. It's brought in new organizations that I didn't know was out there. So that might be something to consider. Councillor Moore.
Speaking of that workshop, are you going to be doing that, offering that again anytime soon?
We offer it in January every year, before our grant deadline of March the 1st.
Okay, thank you.
Is there any other speakers? Councillor Reinhardt.
Thanks. I'll try to be brief because I agree with a lot of the comments that have already been said. The community asset mapping, I think, is really necessary, and I would hope that it could start small and then maybe evolve into including other resources. And I think that would be really helpful to our community groups as well. I know I had a recent situation with a community group who wants to establish a food pantry in their area. So the first thing I said was, why don't you, talk to this one, talk to this one, talk to the 644. And a lot of them had not heard of the 644 in my area. So just even knowing what other groups there are to collaborate with. I think
give my business card out when you go.
I'd love to hear from Engage NS. And also, I'm very supportive of any way we can increase navigation services for our community groups. I attended the presentation that Councillor Smith mentioned by Andy Thompson, and it was very inspiring. He talked about, incredible things that Halls are doing up in Pictou County. Some of them are, and it's all coming from the community and what the community needs. Some of them are establishing childcare spaces. A lot of them are moving to net zero to eliminate their energy costs, which is a huge cost for most of our halls. So I would even be, if other people were interested, I would be interested in having some kind of presentation from him and that group, because it was an incredible workshop. Yes, and the last thing is I'd just like to appreciate that you did note that gap in the program funding, because it is knowing some new programs that have accessed that this year, and wondering how they're going to continue that in future years when it's not a new event. So if we could look into trying to sustain some of those new events, that would be great.
Thank you. Do you feel like you have the direction that you need? I don't have any other speakers yet.
I'm going to reiterate and just so to invite Engage Nova Scotia to present 2019, possibly get Andy Thompson to come in and make a presentation to council. Start small on the community asset mapping, looking at the halls and physical spaces that are available, and look at ways that we can possibly increase the navigation services to our groups and to review our grant policy. I think that is what I heard.
I'm seeing some nods around the table. Councillor Oikel, you have a...
And to promote the 2025.
Right, thank you. Yep.
And that we would like to have that presented to us as well.
Right. Thank you.
Is there any opposition to any of those items that brought forward? No? Then I'd say, Mayor McLean-Weil.
It's not opposition, but I think we've missed the boat a little bit, because I think we're a bit piecemeal in addressing, I think, the underlying issues here. And maybe it will come back in our conversation, but I feel like we didn't take a strategic look at this. We took an approach that is more piecemeal, and that may be okay in the long run, but I'm not sure we have a great plan going forward.
Councillor Smith?
Well, I just wanted to note what the mayor is saying and wondering if, we have direction on all these pieces, which I broadly agree with. I think they're great options, but is there another option for us to have another more refined look at this and kind of put those options on hold for now? I just wonder maybe if the mayor could reiterate what she's thinking in terms of what a strategic approach would look like and how we would, what next steps would be.
Well, I think from a staff point of view, we've already made a decision that will limit the capacity at the current period of time to really look at that. And that's the decision around the funding, and that's fine. I respect the decision of council. So I will bring my thinking back at some point around having a bigger think about what we're trying to accomplish here. And hopefully we can put the pieces together in a bigger context, but I don't feel that staff, from what Trudy has said, are going to have time to deal with this at a higher level.
And I do have, I guess I was focusing on these options. I did have outlined how the current resources can be used. That will take a bit of time and come back with sort of that way forward. I'm not sure how that's going to go either because I haven't really thought about it. But yeah, that overall picture. And I guess what I'd say is I'd be hoping that, like if Invest Nova Scotia comes and presents the data and where people are feeling quality of life is on some of those categories. If things are low or if we're doing things well, it might help us in our more evidence-based decision-making when it comes to quality of life. So I could see how that would feed into that bigger picture. Again, it's very complex. I struggled with this, I'm not going to lie. When I was writing this report and doing the research, it was enlightening, it was time-consuming, it was like, how do you do this? And so I apologize for the long presentation, but I felt it was important to get council to know where we kind of currently are, and then we can, because it's a very complex issue, and we do have to take a strategic approach. We have to be very mindful of how we want to move forward.
Councillor Reinhardt.
So if we didn't pursue some of these options right now, are you saying there would be time to maybe look at that bigger picture then, or?
I do have other staff, so I can delegate some of this stuff. Like I'm thinking the Engage Nova Scotia, like I had several conversations with them, and at the end of the day, I was like, I'm not going to include any of their data because I found it I found it an awkward system to navigate, and they even agreed. So I think it's better that they come and present their results, and then you're getting it firsthand. Because that's probably the most recent data that we have around quality of life in the province of Nova Scotia. So they've already said that they'd be prepared to come in September, I guess is my point, if we wanted them to. So that's a simple phone call. Some of these things are fairly simple. The community asset mapping is going to be time consuming, and looking at that outline of, that's not just me, that's like directors, senior management, taking a look at how we can reshuffle resources, and how we could, deliver more on this quality of life, really focusing on the volunteer sector and the community development model.
So
that's not going to happen in 2 months.
Good conversation and direction coming from that. So I think we can leave you off to continue with that direction.
Okay. All right, thank you.
It is 20 after 12, but with so few items left, my suggestion is just to continue to get these done. I just want to make sure around the table is in agreement. I'm seeing head nods. So we will go to mayors, deputy mayors, and councillor matters. Up first is the LCLC update. There was no meeting held since the last report. However, we did have a strategic planning session that brought together board members, the interim GAM, and staff in leadership jobs at the LCLC, and I will bring more information on that planning session at our next meeting for an update. Deputy Mayor's update, attended agenda briefings, check signings, REMO meeting, and all other meetings as assigned. And next is the Mayor's update.
Well, my report is short because I went on holidays, and but I do want to share a little bit of my observation from another part of the world, because the issues there are not dissimilar to what we have here. And although I tried not to think about council work while I was on holidays, it kept bumping into me as I looked at the 103 wind turbines that crossed Shetland and read and listened to the residents and the people there in their local paper and in just chatting with people, their concerns about moving to build more wind farms in their community and its impact as they move from an economy that was based on oil. And as someone said to me, we had 5,000 years of poverty and 50 years of prosperity from oil. And Shetland had the best roads. Every little village had a community center and a swimming pool. And that was all because of oil money and revenues from oil. And now the issue in the community is that the revenues from generation, wind generation, power generation related to wind turbines is not the same, and the revenues and the promises made to the community were not as they were to be. So there's big concerns about impact of continued development of wind farms and its impact on the landscape, the navigation of birds, the migratory impact of birds, because it's a big bird refuge, and yet a recognition that there's a balance between that and the need to get off oil, and those kinds of conversations are very prevalent here, as are the discussions around generation of electricity. So it really resonated with me. But it was a good break, and there's lots more to think about as we recognize that people around the world are sharing in the important decisions about how we move to protect our environment, and the balances and the decisions between the revenues and its impact on community, and how we also protect community and all the natural habitats and wildlife that exist within it. So those are the concerns we have here as well. The staff and directors and planning staff, along with councillors, met with David Bowlby, the MLA for Annapolis, and the assistant to the Minister of Agriculture, and I think it was a good discussion. His interests were primarily in the area of planning and in the preservation of farmland, and the relationship between food insecurity and access to farmland. I think there was a good discussion, and he was certainly open to having more conversations about the opportunities for agriculture in our district. And I think we all appreciated that someone came and actually consulted with us around some of the issues that are prevalent in the provincial government's discussions as well. Together with our CAO, I met with several residents on the opportunities for housing in the district outside the Cookeville area. Tom Webb, who is involved in several planned cooperative housing projects, which could potentially locate in our municipality. Cooperative housing projects require a lengthy development process to establish appropriate governance structure and the related building and financing plan. So these projects are underway, but still have not made a decision about where to locate. Another resident was interested in potentially donating land for the development of housing in their community. Tom outlined the steps to consider in making that decision as an individual resident and what role the municipality could play in the development of a housing project related to that donation. There was, as Deputy Mayor Vino outlined, there was strategic planning session held at the Lunenburg County Lifestyle Center. This involved the board and representatives from the MJSB and key staff from LCLC. Key issues identified were board governance, financial stability, and operational improvement of the operational improvement to address growth in usage. And I did participate in a meeting regarding the CAO evaluation. We are working on a new process with new documentation to complete the evaluation. The chair of the committee, which is Councillor Reinhardt, will report in more detail on this at a subsequent meeting. So that would be my report.
And with that, that ends our agenda for today for council meeting. Therefore, I'll call the meeting adjourned. Thank you.